Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. Doctor, how are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, very well, mashallah. Looking forward to the stream today, inshallah.
Inshallah. So, guys, an unusual theme today, perhaps for some of you. Episode 56 of the Open Forum. And, you know, we're talking about Bethlehem cancels Christmas. Now, of course, as Muslims, we don't believe in Jesus Christ being crucified, but we do believe in him as a prophet of Allah. And also under Islamic law, you have to allow the people in the land, even in a Muslim country, to be able to celebrate their occasions, their religious occasions and things like that. Now, there might be some opinions whereby people will say a public show or a huge parade or these type of things might be somewhat restricted. Nevertheless, people's churches and are sanctified in Islam. You're not permitted to attack them. You're not permitted to go into them and harass clergy or harass the Christians or the Jews or any other religion for that matter that's recognized within Islam. Even though we might disagree with their ideology, we might disagree with their religious practices, we may regard, in fact, things that they're doing even to be blasphemous. Yet we have the famous, mashallah, story of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when a tribe of Christians come to talk to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they wanted to pray, and the Prophet said, you know, there's a corner in the mosque, you can pray here. And that shows you the level of Islamic teachings when it comes to respecting the rights of other people to be able to celebrate their occasions, celebrate and partake in their religious practices. And subhanAllah, today we're seeing in Palestine where we have churches that are over 1,000 years old, even older than that. You know, some are even older than that. And they've either been blown up. We've had the horrific situation of people within the church being shot by snipers and being killed by snipers. Now, these things within the Islamic tradition, Islamic religion, would be completely haram, completely forbidden to attack civilians, number one, and in particular, attack them inside the churches or in the church grounds. This type of thing would be completely haram, completely forbidden. So, Doctor, I mean, we're seeing these things unfolding in Palestine, and it appears that actually the hatred, the vicious, murderous campaign, of course, is not just limited to Muslims, but it's to Christians, it's to all Palestinians, basically. They're treated with disrespect, with brutality. There are countless videos of Israelis, Orthodox Jews, who are spitting on nuns and spitting on priests and spitting on people who wish to celebrate their traditions within Christianity. Now, this is truly shocking, isn't it, Doctor?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I mean, this is shocking. It's not new though. This is the thing. Maybe the degree is increased because of the war that's happened, the fighting that's happening at the moment. But I think that the thing that is probably important more for Christians than anyone else is that actually we're not hearing a Christian voice of concern about this, which is surprising. At the end of the day, maybe you don't have much concern or care about Muslims in the region. But when your fellow Christians are being, their livelihoods are being affected, that people aren't able to attend for their religious festivals in Bethlehem, which is at this time of year, there'd be like 50 or so tourist groups a month attending. All the hotels will be booked out. There will be lots and lots of pilgrimages going on. And these have all been essentially cancelled because it's just either out of fear, people are either doing it themselves out of fear, or life is difficult because you can't get through checkpoints and you can't get actually into the country, into the areas. And the strange thing is that you can't hear a voice from the Christians. And is that because that people are not aware, or is it actually that hatred of a certain people overrides even your care about your own fellow co-religionists? I don't know. And I think that it's really important to realize actually there is a lot of solidarity between the Christians and the Muslims in Palestine. The Palestinian Christians show a great deal of care and concern about their colleagues, and they are also under the same difficulties as the Muslims are. And because they're a smaller minority, yes, the majority is Muslim in Gaza, but because it's a smaller minority, this is overlooked. Maybe that their suffering is overlooked in this. But now at this time of year, this is something that would be really specifically something that Christians would be thinking about, worrying about. They're making their own celebrations at home, that they're getting all of their decorations, etc. If they're not, they're rushing out and getting their presents, the commercial aspect of Christian Christmas. But actually, where is the concern about what's happening in Bethlehem? I don't understand.
Doctor, do you think it would be any different if it was Muslims who were doing that to the Christians?
Oh, yes.
Would we have a different take in the media? Would things be reported differently here?
Yeah,
would actions be taken differently here? What would be happening?
Yeah, of course. Muslims ban Christmas. Bethlehem under attack. It would be all over the news. Any single negative headline you can think of, Muslims Islamification of Bethlehem. You can imagine the thing that would be going on, which speaks to the prejudice, which speaks to the degree of hatred. You would rather your own Christian people suffer and die, or their livelihoods affected, and even celebrations cancelled, as long as the people that you hate are also being killed within that. And I think that's the problem. You see, it's not, and really the reality of it is you should conduct yourself according to your own principles. It doesn't matter who's on the other end of the receiving end of any situation. Your principle should guide you in how you act. So if I would see a Muslim doing something unjust, I would call that out as unjust. If I see a non-Muslim doing something unjust, I would call that out as unjust. Allah says in the Quran, "Do not let the hatred of a people drive you to injustice." So injustice is it's the thing that you're not allowed to do, and that's really injustice is that thing, and it's very important to remain just at all times. And one of the positive aspects of this, if there isn't a positive aspect of everything that's going on, is again the hypocrisy of the West is being highlighted. And even actually, and I would now dare say, because of this situation where Bethlehem cancels Christmas, and we're not hearing any of these red headlines anywhere, have the Christians also showing signs of hypocrisy in this? They're ready to condemn the Palestinians. I'm just waiting for the first person to come up and ask me, do you condemn Hamas?
Hamas. Do you condemn?
The reality is, are they also condemn? Are they going to condemn anyone who's attacking and affecting the lives of the Christians in the region? It would be interesting to hear. But the reason this was raised was because there is no Christian voice raising this in a prominent way.
And I think that when we look at the level of hatred, the level of brutality, like you said, even if we saw Muslims behaving in that way, Muslims would be the first people in that area to say what you're doing is wrong. You have to stop this. This is un-Islamic. This is against the Islamic teachings. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't Muslims in the world who treat other religions harshly or have treated other religions harshly. But the difference here is that you would not be able to establish that through the explicit teachings of the Quran or the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. In fact, you would find explicit teachings of the Quran and the Hadith, the sayings and actions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that would actually counter such behavior. Whereas what we're finding here is that the Israelis are using biblical passages, Old Testament passages. We've heard about the Amalek and the Amalekites and the descendants of the Amalekites, which genetically, by the way, are also the Palestinians. So they have a history going back over 3,500 years. And in fact, they have over 50-60% of DNA that links them to the Amalek or the Amalekites that were there 3,500 years ago. So and those are the sort of terms that are being used, and there was a very firm and strong opinion within Israel about and amongst certain Jewish authorities, rabbis and what have you, that anybody who stands up against a Jew is an Amalek. So Moses would have been at the time of Moses, Pharaoh would have been an Amalek. Hitler would have been an Amalek. Today, the Palestinians have become the Amalek. And the verses actually that talk about what to do with the Amalek is to completely annihilate them from the face of the earth, not leaving a trace of them. No man, no woman, no child, even the animals should not be spared. They should all be slayed, basically. So this is the sort of mentality, unfortunately, that is being shared. And as I say, Doctor, these questions that we're often asked to start condemning things, it's like almost by default, we are looked at it with an air of suspicion. We have to somehow prove our innocence. We have to prove our humanity before we're even given a chance to start any discussion, which is, I think, quite a hypocritical stance, especially when the very people often asking those questions are the ones who are banging the drums of war and are singing the praises of the genocidal maniacs that are on a killing spree, clearly, where over 20,000 civilians now. 20,000 civilians and over 50 to 60,000 are seriously injured. And by the way, these figures are very conservative because there are potentially many thousands still buried under the rubble. There simply isn't safety, security, or manpower or equipment to even recover the decomposing bodies of their children and of their families. And I was hearing today, somebody was saying that they've lost 60 members of their family, 60 people of their family to this type of bombing. 1% of the entire Palestinian population thereabouts have now been killed. This is clearly, it is a genocide. It is over, I think, 200 academics and, lawyers have signed documents to say that this is genocide. We have a lawyer who retired from or resigned from the United Nations, Craig McIver, who said that this was actually a textbook definition of what genocide is. And yet we have people still claiming, like our, snake of a producer, or rather a presenter, people like Piers Morgan, who don't believe it's a genocide. They don't even want to call it what it is, as to what it is. And they want to play with words and play with definitions somehow, and make it seem like it's not what it actually is. But I think that for the vast majority of us, we know what's going on. If you study the definitions of what genocide is, it clearly is a genocide. Anyway, we're going to get our first guest on, Hakuna Matata. I think you were on the stream last night as well, I believe, on Hamza's Den. But we'll get you on. Just give us a quick wave, Hakuna Matata. Okay, we're going to get you on next. Hakuna Matata, welcome to the stream.
Oh, thank you very much, Abbas, Dr.
You're welcome.
Imran. Yeah, pleasure to meet you guys. I've never spoken to you before. Can you hear me though?
We can hear you loud and clear. I've heard you speaking yesterday on the on the Den there with Hamza and the team there.
Yes.
What nugget of questioning or information do you have for us today, Hakuna Matata?
Well, I don't know, because I just heard you speak about the Jewish relationship with the Muslims in Palestine. I was thinking what you heard of what happened to the Jews in Medina. As soon as the Prophet entered Medina and he had the Treaty of Medina, remember what happened to Ka'ab ibn Ashraf? Remember what happened, the assassination of Ka'ab ibn Ashraf? Okay, I think that's a little bit of a. I don't want to go there.
Hakuna, Matata, one thing that does really
Yes.
surprise me.
Yes.
We started the program in solidarity with our Christian brothers and sisters in Palestine who are being butchered, killed, shot, even in the churches, sniped and shot. And when the daughter is going to save the mother, she's being shot.
Yes.
Instead of starting with thank you, brothers, for talking about my Christian brothers and sisters in Palestine. My feelings are very similar. We're distraught as well. We're worried as well. We are grateful for your solidarity. You didn't do any of that.
Oh, you'll be surprised, actually.
No,
I'm
but
not a
Hakuna
Christian.
Matata, you didn't.
I'm not a Christian.
Okay, but even if you're not a Christian, where's your humanity, my friend?
Oh, my humanity is with humanity itself. And I really love Muslims. I love Christians. And I have absolutely no problem saying whatever Israel is doing is pure genocide.
Yeah, but
100%.
Hakuna Matata, the point I'm
Yes.
trying to make to you is
Yes.
that surely you've come onto the show. We had this discussion, and your humanity for your Christian brothers and sisters, for your Muslim brothers and sisters, would be to first perhaps at least indulge a little bit in terms of that topic. Instead, what you've done is you've raised a red herring, basically, talking about the Muslims and how they treated the Jews in Medina. How much do you know about what happened in Medina and what the relationship in Medina was? How much have you studied this topic?
Not in depth, but I think I have a rough idea enough to discuss about it.
Have you ever heard the saying, Hakuna Matata, a little bit of knowledge is dangerous?
Oh, yes, the butterfly effect as well. Yes,
Yes.
I do know that when you have this kind of delusional belief that you think you know, but there's always somebody who knows better than you. So
Well,
it's good to have a little bit.
It's not just that. It's not about that's something that is the case with everybody on every subject. Somebody will probably always know something more or something different to what you know. But I'm talking about your statement was clearly full of I think innuendos and just ignorance on the subject completely, to be fair.
Is it? Then tell me what you think about Ka'ab ibn Ashraf.
How many tribes were there in Medina?
Three.
Banu
Nadir, Banu Kainuka, and
Banu Nadir.
Banu Nadir.
Yeah, Banu Kainuka.
Banu Kainuka.
Yeah.
And
Banu Qurayda.
Banu Qurayda, yes.
Right. And were all of these tribes, were they all annihilated? Were they killed?
No. But they were expelled for no good reasons.
For no good reasons?
Yes.
Okay. So what was the reason that was given?
They were said to be working with the Quraysh. Like someone like Ka'ab ibn Ashraf. He was a half Arab and a half Jew. So obviously he had a history, because as you can always see from the history of what do you call it? The grand. Why do I always forget his name?
You see, Hakuna Matata, I have the privilege of hearing your conversation yesterday on Hamza's Den. Yes.
Yes. I think I was blessed not to hear that conversation.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
And the problem was, Hakuna, what you did there as well.
Yes.
Is you took a kernel of truth.
Yes.
And then you established a reality.
Okay.
That is contrary to history and contrary to what actually happened.
Oh, I can see Dr. Imran is not very comfortable.
And I just think, unfortunately, you've already admitted that you haven't studied it in real depth. You're not very knowledgeable about the subject, yet you're already now doing exactly the same thing here. But I'll let Dr. Imran, inshallah, continue with this discussion, and then maybe I'll jump in at the end before we get the next guests on. Just a reminder to everybody, this stream is predominantly for non-Muslims. So if you are a non-Muslim, one of the things I actually want to also do, please, is I read some statistics recently that around Christmas time, there's a lot of people who are very lonely. They don't have family and they don't have perhaps friends, or, where they are often left on their own for Christmas. If you'd just like to join us for a little conversation, it doesn't have to be anything deep. We'd be happy to have you on and have a little conversation with you. Hopefully, have a little smile, have a little cheer to make you happy. So if you would like to have a conversation with us about anything, about Christmas, even about perhaps the things that you find difficult or whatever it might be, we'd be happy to have you on. But Doctor, please continue.
To be honest, we don't know where to even start from. I mean, I don't, because this is just. So, Hakuna, tell me a little bit about yourself. Something we can maybe have a conversation about. What's your beliefs? What do you stand for?
Thank you very much. I'm actually surprised nobody ever asked me that question. Dr. Imran, you have asked me a question, and yesterday I was not asked that question. Abbas didn't ask me about that question. Well, I believe in the God of science. Yeah. I believe in a God who doesn't intervene with his creation. And I'm a deist. I would say the God that I believe in, his nature, he exists in a wave function throughout the fabric of space and time. So if we can talk about science and religion, and we can try and compare that, because I believe science has got more answers than religion can offer. You know, if you look at what science gives us, the utility of science itself is much more reliable. It gives you a little bit of a moral higher ground than religion, to be honest. That's what I think. It's my subjective belief. Science is flexible. Yeah, it's not like set in stone like religion is. It's adaptive, changing, evolving. It's falsifiable. You can verify stuff. It's easier to implement. Yeah, you see all those things. If I go one to one and compare what science gives us, I would always lean to the side of science rather than religion.
Okay, so you've started off with a really interesting introduction to yourself, which it's in itself, I would say, internally contradictory, but we'll come to that. The first thing you said was the God of science, and you were a deist. Yes, is that your position?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So tell me how you arrived at the position of being a deist? How did you establish the existence of God?
Wow, I started thinking about consciousness. I thought, wait a minute.
So I'm going to give you a caveat, Brother Hakuna. You can only give me scientific information that would lead me to this conclusion.
Oh, scientific information.
This is your paradigm, right? The God of science, you said.
Yes, the God of science.
So please give me scientific information that would lead me to the conclusion that you're going to arrive at that you're a deist, please.
Why is there something rather than nothing? Does nothing exist? Where and what?
One second, Brother Hakuna. Scientific information. So all the statements you've made so far are philosophical. They're metaphysical. They're not scientific. Okay. Yeah. I'm waiting for you.
All right, then. Quantum vacuum. Heisenberg uncertainty principle. I believe things appear more probabilistic than ordained, than how can I say this? Then they are programmed by an invisible somebody behind the curtain doing the work for us. So I'm thinking of Schrödinger equations. I'm thinking of Niels Bohr quantum field theory. Does that?
Yeah, so throwing out lots of names of different scientists and their theories and their equations, you're not giving me an explanation. So have you carried out any scientific experiments for yourself to verify anything, any scientific fallacy, any scientific claim, or not?
No, but I am a naturalist.
So, that's fine. I understand you're a naturalist, and this is why I asked you because you started off with metaphysical questions, and then you went on to say, give a subjective view that you think that things seem as if they are better rather than being designed and created, that they're somehow better explained. And then you started throwing out lots of scientific, as if they're impressive. I'm not impressed personally by just the titles of the equations that people have. Schrodinger was an individual. Yes, okay, that's fine. So Schrodinger's equations just means that guy's equations. It's just mathematical, whatever. But the point here is that you haven't. What you've done is you've thrown out things that are not empirical, that you do not have access to empirically, therefore cannot form the set of data that you believe in empirically, unless you're saying that these are my prophets of science who I believe in, and I have very strong faith in my prophets of science, Schrodinger and Bohr and whoever else that you want to quote. And if that's the case, then we can go further with that. But what
Absolutely.
I would like you to do is, before even that stage, how have you arrived at the position of being a deist, i.e. there is a God, but he doesn't intervene? And because you're a materialist now, because there's a contradiction in terms here now, you're claiming to be someone who believes in God, and that God is non-intervening, and that's the definition of a deist. And then at the same time, you say you're a naturalist, which precludes and excludes anything that is supernatural. It's again a contradiction in terms. So what I'd like you to do, if that's okay, is to tell me how you've arrived at being a deist using your materialist scientific paradigm as your explanation. So I'll wait for you, brother.
Yes, I've arrived at being a deist by thinking about consciousness. When I say consciousness, is that something rather than nothing, and these immaterial things gaining knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is the absence of nothingness. So when I thought about nothingness, I said, okay, if nothingness does not exist, it only exists in our head for computational purposes. It's an entity.
Brother Hakuna, so
yes,
you've made a lot of jumps in this the sentences that you've just given. So you were thinking about consciousness, and then you seem to be having a chain of thought. You're a materialist.
Yes.
So tell me how you think.
Exactly. I'm telling you. I'm trying to show you that.
You don't understand my question, maybe.
Maybe.
You're a materialist.
Yes.
Yeah. That means there is nothing supernatural. Do you understand that? Yeah. Everything is nature, material. Yes. Do you agree with this?
Yes. There's nothing outside nature.
Okay. So now what I'm going to explain, and it's interesting, outside nature. So now everything that happens anywhere is, because there's no outside nature now, everything is within nature. Everything that happens everywhere is a result of a series of natural events and processes that preceded.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They are all anything else is imagined from that.
Sorry?
Anything else apart from nature emerges from
I
nature
understand
itself.
I understand that's your position. Yeah.
Yes.
I understand that's your position. So just to recap, because we're going to go further with this. So you claim to be someone who believes in a God that doesn't intervene, which is what the definition of a deist is. Yet you claim to be an exclusively a naturalist. There is nothing outside of nature, which would preclude, which would actually, it opposes the first statement that you're a deist. And then the question I was asking you about is how you think, and you agree with me that everything that happens in the world, in the universe, in any place, because everything is nature, there is no outside nature, happens because of a series of natural processes that bring about the result. Yes?
Yes, but there's also panpsychism within it. So there is a panpsychism element to it.
So you're a deist who's a naturalist who believes in panpsychism. Is that the...
Yes, correct.
Okay, sorry that you're making me laugh, brother. So we'll come on to the panpsychism in a second, yeah, because this is very interesting.
I think before you continue, Doctor, I mean, you need to ask Hakuna. Hakuna, is there any other thing that you believe simultaneously whilst we're at this?
I believe in people and human beings, love, everything else, and Christmas as well.
Okay, no, but I'm just saying, in terms of your belief system,
yes.
Do you want to throw anything else in there? Because obviously to analyze you is getting more and more difficult now.
Okay, listen. I don't. I'm not a Hindu as such, because I know you're thinking of panentheism. No, I'm not going there yet. Maybe in the future. In the future.
No, that's not the point. So let me just try and carry on, because you're adding some extra masala to the tea that's not necessary at the moment. Let's start again. So you're a deist that deist by definition, someone who believes that God exists but doesn't intervene in the universe, who at the same time is a materialist, i.e. nothing outside of the material universe exists and everything is material. And where we talk about the result of anything that happens in the result of anything that happens in the universe is because of some sort of a cause that's happened before, some natural processes over which you have no control. Do you agree with that? You have no control over natural processes. They occur because of the properties of the parts of nature that are interacting.
Yes, they exist as a wave function throughout the fabric of space and time.
Okay, there is no way for you to control the wave function.
No, it's probabilistic.
Okay, is anything outside of this chain of events?
Apart from the probabilistic nature of it, that actually where I emerge from, even consciousness.
Okay. Hear the question, Hakuna.
Go on.
Is there anything, any effect that is outside of the chain of events?
There are no hidden. No, there are no hidden variables. No,
okay.
We don't have no hidden
Absolutely.
variables.
So, at what point are you able to control your thoughts then?
As soon as I gain enough knowledge over a very long period of time.
Knowledge is part of the thinking process. How are you able to control your thoughts? And I'll tell you why. Because I'm not trying to trap you here. I'm just trying to make you realize the consequences of what you're saying. If everything is,
I don't think you need to trap him. I think he's already trapped himself.
I understand. That wasn't a trap. That was like,
all right.
Yeah. But yes, let's not go there for a second. But let's just we'll humor the conversation. So the point here is that if only the material world exists,
yes,
and everything in the material world is a result of the only effect in the material world is a result of previous natural processes.
Yes.
And your thoughts are also a part of the material natural world.
Yes.
And therefore they are the result of previous natural processes that you don't have any control over. Just like you can't control the sodium reacting with the chlorine.
Yes, the emergent properties. Yes.
So what you have then is that your thoughts themselves are predetermined.
Predetermined or probabilistic?
No, predetermined.
They're not predetermined.
Predetermined.
They're coming from probabilistic.
No, but what is that? You're just using the term probabilistic without understanding the principle behind it.
Yeah, well, when you have enough combinations, these combinations gain enough.
No, but Hakuna, you have an infinite number of combinations. I'm giving them to you.
Okay.
You have no control over how those infinite number of combinations are going to react and the effect which results from them. Do you?
They have already done that for me. So I'm just doing what.
My question I'm asking you is:
yes,
of those infinite number of combinations, do you have any influence over which result and outcome there will be?
No, they're probabilistic.
No. So therefore, you cannot control your thoughts.
I can't.
Which explains no, you cannot control your thoughts with your position as because even the way you're describing it shows me that even now probably you don't have control over your thoughts. Because you're describing yourself as a deist,
yes,
as someone who believes that God exists, God by definition.
Not a theist. Not a theist.
A deist. Do you know what a deist is?
Yes, I don't believe.
What is a deist?
A deist is somebody who believes in well, you say a God, you say. But
a deist is a subcategory of
I believe he does
deism.
not.
Deism is a subcategory of theism. You understand that?
Is it? Because I thought it's somebody who God does not intervene.
I told you, Hakuna, you have no control over your thoughts. So
yes. I thought I should tell you a deist.
So a deist is someone who believes that God exists and that God created the universe. No, God. There's no such thing as a God of science.
There is.
No. This does not. Hakuna,
I'll tell you why.
Respect.
God of the gods.
We can come to that, but first you need to tell me. First, you need to tell me how you're thinking, because as a naturalist,
Yes.
Your very thoughts are simply the results of previous determined reactions that are happening.
Yes.
And there is no way there's anything outside of nature for you to actually. Assalamu alaikum, brother Ijaz, lovely to see you. There is nothing outside of nature that can intervene into this natural processes to change any effects, and therefore the very thoughts that you are producing, which are the result of these previous aforementioned factors, are not in your control. So rather than trying to explain to me anything, the first question I ask is, how are you thinking?
Well, through self-propelling reorganizations.
No, but you cannot propel. There's no such thing as self-propelling.
But this
brother Hakuna, there's no such thing as self-propelling, because you're talking about properties of the universe, parts of the universe, subatomic particles, whatever you're talking about.
Yes, that's self-reorganized.
Self-reorganization is just it's a joke what you're saying, because it's a contradictory in terms, because either you have material which is just reacting to according to its properties, and there's no conscious direction of this.
Right.
So there's no self-reorganizing. You understand? It's nothing to do. It cannot do anything to itself. It can just react, and the effects you see are because of those predetermined properties and the effects that result in the causes that you see. Your brain is a collection of these parts of the universe that interact in whichever way they interact, and you're there, and therefore your thoughts are also a result of those chemical or reactions that are occurring within your brain, and you have no control over those. So at the moment,
tell you how I have control.
At the moment, no, you cannot tell you, brother Hakuna.
Yes.
You can. There's only one way to come out of this.
Okay.
But I'll let you give me your explanation of telling me how I can believe that you think first before we go anywhere else.
Well, abiogenesis. When that happened,
brother,
that jump. When that jump happened,
Hakuna,
okay.
What does abiogenesis mean?
Well, when these particles gained enough consciousness, they're self-aware. These particles became self-aware.
Brother Hakuna, Hakuna, 1 second.
The jump.
Look, with all respect, due respect, brother Hakuna, abiogenesis has got nothing to do with consciousness. Okay, it's a term. What does the term mean? I'm asking you. Don't tell me particles become self-aware, because that contradicts the split, the photon split experiment. If you say particles became self-aware, to say that particles become self-aware, you contradict scientific observations. So what I want from you is to explain to me how is it that you can think
through discerning nothingness. If I can discern.
Discerning is part of your thinking process. So tell me how you can rely that you are on the fact that you're able to have a train of thought that's under your control.
Yeah. Okay. If you just answer one question for me, please.
I'll try.
Does nothingness exist?
We both agree that it doesn't.
Okay, but do you believe in?
No, but this is all thinking.
Okay, please. Sorry.
Hakuna, brother, this is all thinking. Before we talk about, we have a train of thought. Before we have a chain of thought interactions,
yes,
I need to know that I'm not talking to a robot. So I need to know how it is that you're thinking, brother.
I'm a robot.
How do you explain the fact that you're thinking? Just please explain that to me.
I'm a robot made from the God of science, God of the gaps. You know God of the gaps? The one where we do science until we cannot know anymore.
Hakuna, I don't think, honestly, that we're having a sensible conversation. I've got brother Edris waiting, and there's other people who want to come on the show as well, Hakuna. Right. I really think you need to perhaps think about what you're saying perhaps a little bit more carefully. Because even materialists today, some who've studied neuroscience and stuff like that, they actually admit that they do not make any decision independent of a process that preceded that decision or that action.
That's true.
It's a domino effect. The domino falls, and what you're saying right now, when you just said it's true, you had no choice in saying it's true. It was a domino that fell before that, which was a domino that fell before that, which was a domino that fell before that. I think that's what Dr. Imran has just established for you here. I just think that you're perhaps being selective in terms of, being honest about what you really believe, because you want to believe that you have rationality, you have intelligence, you have the ability to decipher, decide. But in reality, as a materialist, you don't. That's the point. You can't have your cake and eat it. And I think that's what you're really trying to do. So, Ijaz, if you'd like to have a quick conversation, if you want to add anything, otherwise we'll get the next guest on.
He's a robot. I don't see the point in speaking with a robot.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It was lovely talking to you. Yeah.
It was nice talking to you.
With all sort of funniness aside,
yes,
I think it's really important to have a really grounded reason and a rational reason and outcomes of what you believe. So just think through those a little bit more. We're happy to even talk to you off of this, on being online, because some of the things you're saying, I hope you don't say them again, because it doesn't come across very nicely for you. And I'm sure that you're a very intelligent person, and so just to raise the level of the discussion. But Hakuna, lovely talking to you, and I hope we speak again. Okay.
Yeah, and before you go, very quickly, look, at the end of the day, this is a trap that a lot of people fall into. Oh, there's some history about Islam where this happened or that happened. That's why I don't believe Islam is true. We don't go to those aspects first to establish what is true and what is not true. We go to the Quran. We believe that there are objective reasons for believing that this is outside of the capacity of a human being. We believe that it claims to be a miracle, and in fact, it is a miracle on that basis. We believe that it claims to be preserved, and it is preserved. And there are numerous experts, both Muslims and non-Muslims, who've confirmed that with evidence, by the way. We're talking about carbon dating. We're talking about manuscript evidence. We're talking about chains of memorization that can be established right the way back to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. We look at those things, and we establish the miraculous nature of the Quran. We connect that to the creator of the heavens and the earth. And the way that we then have certainty about what to believe and what not to believe comes from that concept, which I believe is evidentially based. Now, people can say, look, you're biased, you'll accept certain evidences. Of course, there's always an element of bias within all of us. But I believe that the evidences for the Quran and for Islam, in fact, are so strong that it supersedes that potential suspicion where things are in the balance and the bias is taking it one way or the other. I believe that the established evidences are so strong, in fact, that it's not about bias. It's really just about recognizing those evidences. But this is what we call you to. We call you to Islam. Maybe we can have a more fruitful discussion next time, but we value your coming on, and you were very courteous, and it was a nice discussion, Hakuna.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, Idris, we're going to get you on next. If you could just put your camera on. I do believe you have been on before. Just give us a thumbs up, Idris, and then you can come on now. You can turn your camera off, and then we can get you on. Idris, welcome to the stream.
Yeah, thank you. Peace to everybody. And yes, I did hear the prelude, and I definitely feel for all the suffering people in the entire earth. Especially the Palestinians, obviously, are going through heavy times right now, for sure.
Thank you, Idris. So, Idris, I do remember that you came on previously as well.
Yeah, so I thought about several of the things you guys talked about.
I believe that was it true that you came from a Muslim family, and that you decided you felt that science had a better take on reality? Is that correct? Am I correct in thinking that, or have I got it wrong?
Yeah, that's more or less.
Sure. Okay. So how would you like to follow up from our discussion previously then? Because I think we did talk about a few things in relation to that, didn't we?
Yeah. So I first of all, I guess I think there's definitely utility in religion. I think there's utility in Islam, and, not having a nihilistic sort of worldview. I think there's definitely utility in that. And I thought about some of the things you said about, not assuming that there's only materialism just because you haven't seen it. And I think that's a decent thought argument. It seems like, I guess, and I also like what you were saying about the, your process of coming towards Islam. And I would like to be Muslim because I think it would be definitely more congruent with me and my family. But I just don't feel convinced. And when you said,
Idris, if we can sort of, if we can move on in terms of what is it that you find as a hurdle to accept Islam? What is that hurdle for you?
It seems that everything that I see seems more congruent with just natural processes, and Islam seems sometimes make certain claims that just seem kind of silly. And before I would just kind of shrug them off and I just wouldn't even think about it because I'd already, kind of been born and raised Muslim, I guess. Like I just kind of assumed that by default. But just in general, it just seems that the world is more congruent with just natural processes. And even though, yes, Islam is kind of a metaphysical, God supernatural thing that we can't observe directly, I don't think there's any. I'm wondering if we even defined supernatural and metaphysical entities into existence. Maybe there's no such thing as that. I just my heart isn't there. Maybe my heart or my mind. I mean, I'd like to believe.
So Idris, when you say natural processes, in effect, what you're saying is processes that we can discover, that we can study, that we can establish in terms of what the mechanics is, how they work, right?
Yeah,
right.
Like things kind of emerge like a snowflake.
Why would that therefore mean that there would be somehow a question mark on whether God created those things in the first place?
Yeah, but it seems indistinguishable from there being no God.
Sorry, could I interject there?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about that, Idris. That naturalism would seem more congruent with reality than Islam. Let's start with a very simple point, for example, consciousness. I think Islam gives us a reasonable explanation for consciousness.
Sure.
I think Islam gives us a reasonable answer as to how human thoughts and language develop. We have this inherent built-in language model that every human is predisposed with. And I think the latest studies even show that when they ask children to do of different languages and ethnicities to move to describe, to act out an action with their hands rather than with words, we find that they all do the same action with their hands, the same movements. So the thing is, that isn't a learned behavior. It's a trait.
Yeah, that's a good point.
An inherent trait, but it's not an evolutionary trait. Right? It's not, because it's something which is non-verbal, but it does not give us any discernible benefit.
Yeah.
Right? Understand this. So the thing is, we can't say that humans were born with an inherent language processing model randomly, and that we all ended up with it. There must be a reasonable explanation for that. That's why we say that there must be, not that there may be, but there must be a metaphysical reality to all things. If, on the other hand, I go the naturalistic route, I cannot seem to explain that predisposition across continents and ethnicities and times. They're all similar, too similar to be coincidental, is what we would say. So let's just go backwards a little bit here.
Yeah.
When you say that naturalism is congruent with reality, what is something that naturalism presents to us that Islam cannot or does not explain sufficiently enough for you? Just one point, perhaps the most significant one.
I think Islam has done a very good job at explaining phenomenon. I don't think I need. I can challenge that easily.
But when you say it's less congruent with reality, can you give us one of those examples, perhaps?
I guess it's that naturalism is congruent with reality, and I guess that does kind of imply that Islam isn't. But it's like we don't. I feel it seems to me like we don't need an extra explanation of a supernatural
But we're not saying
intervener.
supernatural. Yeah, we're not
Sorry?
saying supernatural or intervener. We're saying
Mm.
metaphysical, because the
Okay.
world is something beyond physicalism. And here's the thing,
I don't
though.
know. I don't agree with that. I don't know if
But
that's
you
true.
do, you do agree. I'll give you an easy example. Why?
Let's go.
I'll give you an easy example.
Okay.
Did you have to think before you say those words?
I don't know.
Yeah, you did.
Usually, I'm not. I don't think I'm conscious of the words I'm going to use. Usually, sometimes I am.
You always have to be conscious of the words you're using, even if they're subconscious. If it is that
okay.
you're not conscious of the words that you're using, then it means that you don't attend to your own thoughts. And I don't believe that about you.
I haven't given considerable thought to that. That's something.
That's circular.
That's a good point.
No. You see the problem we end up with. For Islam, we say, well, no, it makes sense why you have thoughts. It makes sense that Allah gave you a body, which is an amana, and He gave you aql, reasoning. And so Allah calls us to reason, right? He doesn't tell us not to reason. He does not tell us abstain from observing reality and discerning truths about them. He doesn't say to stay away from that. In fact, He says, do it, because this is what we call natural theology. We can observe the Creator's hand behind all entities. That's what we believe. It's a philosophical paradigm.
No, I understand you believe that, but I don't.
But you do as well. You do
Sorry?
as well. You do as well.
I believe
because
that what?
You believe that there's a metaphysical hand
I don't think
behind
so.
behind all created things.
I don't
Because
think so. I believe that.
because when you say naturalism is congruent with reality, doesn't naturalism have to be something which is conscious?
Doesn't that say that last part again?
Okay, all things which exist, they have causes and effects, right? So they have to be conscious, or they have to be respondent to stimuli, right?
Well, I don't know about all that.
Okay, I'll leave it with Dr. Imran, or perhaps Brother Uncle Abbas.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I just want to say, Idris, is that, you said you look at naturalistic things and they point towards or evidence towards there not being a God. But then you've got, the famous Dr. Huberman, for example, who I believe is a neuroscientist. Maybe you've seen some of his works on the internet, right? He's quite well known. And recently he came out with a really interesting discussion where he said that it's precisely the things that he sees within consciousness that has actually convinced him of a creator, a God.
Yeah.
So you see, the point I'm trying to make to you there is that you have arrived at a different conclusion looking at the same data, or perhaps similar data, because obviously I'm presuming you're not a neuroscientist, right?
No.
Right. Okay. But I believe you are involved in science, or you've studied science at some level, some high level. So that's quite commendable. But here you have another scientist who's also looking at what one would assume a natural phenomena from your perspective, but that actually points to a creator. It points to a God. So what I would then say is that it seems unreasonable then to use that as the catalyst to establish that reality. Would you say that's a fair statement?
I agree. I don't think that's a good basis. I think that basis is within the scope of my mind.
Yeah.
Like I would like that'd be amazing if I felt that consciousness entailed a higher being and metaphysical truths. I think that'd be amazing. But from what I've seen, I don't have that feeling of, yes, this determines that there should be a higher power or some kind of God.
But the point that I'm trying to make, Idris, is that tool you're using to measure the reality of whether God exists or doesn't exist, that same ruler is being used by other people who are also incredibly intelligent and educated within expertise within their particular field, which is neuroscience, for example.
And I think that's the amazing thing about the nature of belief.
Yeah. No, but sorry, Idris. My point really is that since that is not a, let's say, an objective way, it's a very, very subjective way of looking at things, because clearly people are arriving at different conclusions looking at the same data or similar data. I would suggest that perhaps that's the wrong place to be looking at in terms of establishing whether a creator exists or doesn't exist.
Perhaps, but I don't think Huberman was making that claim as sort of an objective claim. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel that was maybe.
No, I'm not saying he was.
Personal reasons.
I'm not saying he was making an objective claim. I'm saying the very opposite. I'm saying the very fact that his subjective claim based upon the data that he sees, and your subjective claim upon similar data that you see, arrive at polar opposite positions.
Yeah, and you made that point a few weeks ago.
So what I'm trying to establish here is perhaps that evidence that you're both looking at maybe is not necessarily in itself the best place to be looking at to establish whether God exists or doesn't exist. Do you see my point?
Sure.
So what other avenues, what other places might you be able to look at that might give you better clarity or less subjectivity? Let's put it that way.
Sure. I mean, so that's one thing in my mind. And then I guess the next thing would be maybe the arbitrariness of belief seeming to be having, I would say the highest association would be with, geographic and political boundaries and cultural boundaries.
No, but Idris, I think maybe I didn't clarify my question. I'm saying if those sets of evidences are not good places to look to establish whether God exists or doesn't exist, what other evidences might there be that perhaps offer less subjectivity and more objectivity, where there's a greater ability to apply tests that may establish with greater evidence or greater clarity of the existence of God? That's what I'm asking you.
Okay, I think I understand you now. I think a better, more objective way of ascertaining would be looking for claims that Islam or the Quran says that are falsifiable, things that can be investigated, and just using critical thinking. I think that would probably
have you done that? And have you done that?
I've tried, maybe not exhaustively, but I think I've tried.
And have you found major issues or problems with that approach that you haven't perhaps extended your study on those aspects?
I've tried. I think that I found it a little difficult to find claims that I can observe in the natural world that the Quran or Islam makes that are falsifiable. To me, they seem.
I'm just sort of curious as to why they have to be natural phenomena that exist, and then you somehow test those phenomena, because the Quran makes many other claims as well.
I don't know also how to. Yeah, so maybe you can offer some, because that's where I was looking.
Okay.
Maybe
so look, one of the things that I would like to do, inshallah ta'ala, look, if you're happy to email us, we'll try to put our email on the screen as well. Sure. And I will send you some links to articles and information that I believe, that I believe are less subjective and are more objective. So one of them, I don't know if you've managed to study, the Quran itself claims to be a miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it has the inimitability challenge in there. And the inimitability challenge obviously has many components to it. Excuse me. But I'd like to, inshallah, perhaps not necessarily spell all those out for you today here, but maybe send you some links that for you to read. There's a 75-minute article on Sapiens Institute about the miraculous nature of the Quran in terms of its linguistics. Mm-hmm. There's also the works of Professor Raymond Farrin that I've mentioned many times before as well, which talk about the structural elements of the text itself, and how he, before he was a Muslim, after studying the complexity of this, was convinced that this was outside of the capacity of human beings.
Yeah, I'd love to read those.
So inshallah, I will provide you with, while Dr. Imran is engaging with you, I'll see if I can pull some links out and post them in the chat, private and also the public chat. and others can perhaps benefit from them as well. And hopefully you yourself, Idris, can benefit from them as well.
Yeah,
Doctor, if you'd like to continue, inshallah, while I get those links, inshallah.
Sure, you can grab the links. Welcome, Idris. So, Idris, I think
yeah, welcome.
I think I'm just trying to see how we can progress forward, because it seems to me that I might be wrong in this, but it seems to be that you're falling into something called Scientism. Would you agree with that, or do you know what that is? Or
yeah, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. Sure.
The idea that the only way to learn anything about anything in any field is science.
I feel that, yeah, I probably do feel that I associate with that. Yes.
Yeah, and that's a problem, you see, because that's not true. And when you start off with your worldview in such a way is that you limit your frame of reference and your way of trying to look at the sunglasses that you're wearing to see the world to be that of scientism, then you're going to end up with the wrong conclusions. And this is what I would say is the difference between maybe Professor Huberman and yourself in your conclusions about the existence of a creator or not. You've fallen down on that side of can't be, and he's on the side of there's no issue here. Of course he can be, and so we have these two opposing views from. And I would dare say, relatively scientific background, and I would say that I'm the same. I'm a methodological naturalist in that I believe that when I'm doing science and utilizing science, that my framework is naturalism. But actually, I'm not. My worldview is not constrained by that. I'm not a I'm not a philosophical naturalist, because there are other things I know that science is not able to explain that require explanation, and therefore I have to use other tools to get those answers, be that consciousness, be that value, be that meaning, be that purpose. None of those are scientifically explainable. So do you understand because I'm just trying to I'd like to, rather than just, I don't want it to make it like a you and me or an us and them type of scenario. I'd like to sort of make some progress, because particularly when you're raised in the West, and I went through this same thing. I was very science focused. I enjoyed and I still enjoy doing science, and I try and read widely as I can about these things. And then I was very much influenced as this is being the way. Oh, that doesn't sound very plausible, doesn't sound rational, because wouldn't fit into my scientific paradigm. And then it took a while for me to actually learn a little bit more about the foundations of science that then led me out of that sort of rabbit hole. Are you aware of the founding principles that are within science? You're aware of those?
Not right now. No, you can summarize those maybe.
I would just give you one sentence. The basic fundamental principle in science is that there are no non-natural explanations.
Sure.
Everything has to be explained naturally. There cannot be any other way of explaining it. And that is
correct.
Absolutely. And that's both a positive, and when you're doing your science, in that it allows you to posit and determine natural causes. But it's a negative in that you're constrained by that worldview. Then there can never be. You are automatically cut off from making any way of inquiry about anything that might be outside of nature. You can't do it
within the scope of science, because science then would be irrelevant because you can't observe it or test it. So it automatically falls out the realm of science. It could be a personal truth. No,
you're misunderstanding me. Because we're talking now about your explanation for everything, not about your personal things at all. Even those things that do you understand?
Okay, no. I don't think I would say that science would have the ability to explain everything, but I would say science, or just observation, critical.
What could it not explain? Go ahead. What could it not explain, Idris?
Anything that can be observed and tested and falsified. So I know there's a limit to like the horizon of what I can know, that I can sort of have confidence that I know that I know, and beyond that horizon, it could be that metaphysical. I guess that's where metaphysical world is, but I feel like I don't have access to that world because it's easy to just be duped. You don't have any justifiable reasons for
So the question now is no longer about, because I like what you said, because you said you're aware of the limits of the science approach,
Yeah.
which is good, because that is actually going to allow you then to say, okay, for my inquiry into something outside of science, or something that science or empirically not amenable, then I need to have a different set of tools. And then you've because why? You don't want to be duped, you don't want to be misled, you don't want to end up thinking or concluding the wrong things. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So when you said right in the beginning that everything I look around and see seems to be more congruent with nature or a natural perspective, as you talked about the Ijaz, then you know that statement therefore is now limited.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that means not everything that you look around and see would be amenable. And I would say there's lots of things I see that are not amenable to nature.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, but the things that I see are nature. So I wouldn't expect to see something that's not part of nature by definition.
Consciousness. The brother Ijaz spoke to you about consciousness, value.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I don't know. I don't want to get entangled with that. Like the previous caller.
You should though.
Yeah, because
I know why.
Yeah.
It's difficult, but we're not here to deal with the easy. We're here to deal with the difficult.
Yeah.
And we could even put consciousness aside, right? We can discuss morals and ethics, right? That goes a step further. Just keep in mind that just pure data can't give you morals and values.
I agree. Can't. I agree with that. Yeah, right? Sure.
So the thing is, a worldview where hard data guides morals and values is inevitably a nihilistic worldview, because it ends up being about numbers.
Sure.
It ends up being about numbers.
Yeah. If you get very, break things down, yes, you get to a nihilistic point of view.
Eventually you're just categorized as another collection of particles.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
Why does one collection of particles matter than the other?
Yeah, sure.
And having that thought, but that's
reductionist point of view,
but many people take this point of view today. That's why Yusuf Ponders has written a book on nihilism. Dr. Imran.
So the reductionism is the scientific approach.
It is, but it just gets really strange when you get very reductionist. Like then things seem very wrong, even though
I agree. So let me rephrase that. So when you start to use the scientific approach too much, things can go wrong. I agree with that.
No.
You end up making the wrong.
I'm saying things seem very wrong, right?
That's what I'm hearing. So you've heard of Thomas Nagel, Professor Thomas Nagel.
It rings a bell, but remind me.
So he's a Cambridge professor of philosophy, and his focus is actually on the mind. And he wrote a great book that I always reference when I'm talking to people because it's good to read. And it's called Mind and the Cosmos: Why the Material Neo-Darwinian Concept of Nature is Almost Certainly False. And this is just sort of
I need to read that. Yeah,
it's really good. Worth it. So I'm just gonna give you a couple of things. Yeah, just one thing that's really important. He says that my guiding conviction is that the mind is not just an afterthought or an accident or an add-on, but a basic aspect of nature. Science is driven by the assumption that the world is intelligible. Without that, I'm just sort of highlighting a few things within a page, not the whole thing. Without the assumption of an intelligible underlying order which antedates the scientific revolution, those discoveries would not have been made. So the question is, what explains this order? One answer would be that nothing does. Explanation comes to an end in the order itself, which the assumption of intelligibility has merely enabled us to uncover. And then he goes on to say that that's basically saying this is just how things are. And so he concludes, he makes many assumptions. So he's basically saying that we need to be able to explain the intelligibility of the universe, and that we have a mind that allows us to delve into these things. And he says that when it comes to neo-Darwinianism, the account of the origin and evolution of life, he says there are a couple of problems. He says, firstly, given what is known about the chemical basis of biology and genetics, and what is the likelihood of that self-reproducing life forms should have come into existence on the early Earth solely through the operations of laws of physics and chemistry, that's a question that needs to be addressed. The second question is about the sources of variation in the evolutionary process that set into motion once life began. In the available geological time since the first life forms appeared on Earth, what is the likelihood that as a result of physical accident, a sequence of viable genetic mutations should have occurred that was sufficient to permit natural selection in order to produce the organisms that actually exist. He says the contemporary research in molecular biology reveals that that leaves open the possibility of legitimate doubts about the fully mechanistic account of the origin of evolution of life, depending only upon the laws of chemistry and physics. This can combine with the failure of psychophysical reductionism to suggest that the principles of a different kind were also at work in the history of nature. So he's very anti-reductionist. He says that it's difficult to challenge the modern concepts that we have about in science that we have, particularly when it comes to there being only natural explanations for everything that we see. And he says that sometimes there are things that are not explainable and they're just brushed to a large extent under the carpet. So there's no biological explanation for thoughts and mind and these things.
Yeah. It's a tough
But
one,
actually that is probably the most fundamental observation that we have.
Absolutely.
And he says that if you're missing a large chunk of the observer, if your theory is not explaining a large chunk of the observed data, then your theory is probably wrong. And so the reason that I'm saying all of this was that it's if you limit yourself to the scientific view, you're going to end up with conclusions that are not viable. And I think that a lot of people, and I was in this same process, when you come out of that, you realize there are other things that other tools that we can use. Then the question then becomes, the question that you asked, how do we then determine that we're heading in the right direction, doing the right things? And there's a few approaches to this. But the first approach, I think your first step would be maybe establishing whether or not God is a reasonable position to say that God exists. Let's not even say that proving, but is it a reasonable position to say that God exists? Once you have that step, then the step comes which specific worldview or about which God concept would be the one that would fit with this deduction or induction that we have used, and then that would be the step forward from there. But I think you're part of it, and this is not, I'm not disparaging. Part of it is that we do carry the remnants of our colonial mindsets, and whenever we see the Western world bring ideas that seem to be a certain way, we swallow them hook, line, and sinker without enough critical analysis of those ideas. And we need to step out from this. In the West, there was a conflict between science and religion. We had the Inquisition. We had Galileo and Copernicus were sort of really controlled by the church and limited in what they could publish. There was a list of books that could not be read and written out. And I think that was it Copernicus or Galileo was under house arrest until he died. And Copernicus released his book about the heliocentric universe. He released it in the year that he died. He had it ready, but he didn't want to release it until he knew that it wouldn't affect him anymore. And it was literally in the year of his death that he was so old he released it then. And that book actually became banned as well. Now in the East, when it is with Islam, we don't have this history. We don't have this history of conflict between science and religion. They've actually gone hand in hand. In fact, we believe the Quran tells us to go and look at the world around you and the nature that you find, because it will bring you closer to the understanding that there isn't a creator and
I think
order around
definitely
you.
One of the utilities of Islam definitely was pushing people towards discovery and critical thinking and rationality. But I would say for some of the quotes of that book you put in, one Neil Tyson quote I like is that the universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. And while the universe has mysteries, I don't know if we need to look to God immediately instead of dealing with the mysterious.
Yeah, but Tyson is making a basic error. And the basic error is that the universe is intelligible. So it doesn't matter whether it's not about obligation.
He's saying that it doesn't need to be.
But this is a problem. But this is because the way this is the way I'm saying it's a basic error. I'm not even with all due respect, a very intelligent, obviously individual in his field. He does not know what he's talking about when he says that the universe is under no obligation to be intelligible. The reality is the only way you can do science is if there's uniformity in your experiments and your results. And the problem that we have is that, and the problem that he has, not that we have, is that the reality is that we see order around us.
Sometimes we don't.
No,
So
no. Even
sometimes
in
science
that,
is confounding.
no.
Sometimes
So
what we observe is confounding.
Let me explain. I understand the fact that we don't understand how some things work is not disorder. So I would go as far as to say there is no such thing as chance or randomness. Yeah, and I can qualify that, but the whole point here
I all believe that. We all believe that.
Sure, we all believe that. And the point here is that what the only way that I'm going to say Tyson Fury, but that's not his name. The only way that
Neil Tyson,
Neil Tyson can make this. Neil Tyson deGrasse can make these sorts of statements. Is really these are just sort of talking points from atheists. The reality is if you look around and you see. We see order we're everywhere within the universe. Otherwise, all I can say, because there are some people who go so far as to say there is the only thing that is in order is what is in your stream of consciousness. So as I turn away from the camera no longer exists. Everything is going, it's turning. It's a waveform that can become anything else. And it could be a pink elephant sitting there now. And when I turn back, I can see the reality again because I'm imposing upon it something that gives order because I'm observing it. The reality
But who are we to impose upon the universe our rules?
No, we're not imposing upon the universe our rules.
That it should be intelligible.
No.
Why must it? Why can't some things make sense and other things just don't make any sense? Who are we to demand that things be congruent?
I understand. So no one is making a demand. We are simply uncovering what's already there. And the way we are able to uncover what's already there is because there's an order to be uncovered. If there wasn't an order to be uncovered, if there weren't relationships that we then later define as laws to be uncovered, if they weren't already there in some form or another, then we wouldn't be able to discover them because everything would be different.
Yeah, absolutely. So we found order. I agree. We found order, but that doesn't necessarily follow that there should be order in every single nook and cranny, and every single phenomenon should make sense. If you look at QM, for example, it was quite confounding for a while, probably even till now.
So again, what I would say again is lack of understanding is not disorder.
No, it doesn't have to be disorder.
Yeah.
But I just think it's difficult to.
No, it doesn't have to be, Idris. Lack of understanding is not disorder, irrespective of whether you ever understand it or not.
I don't know. I think that's making a positive claim.
It's over ignorance. It's just over ignorance, right?
Yeah, it's better just to be ignorant of what we don't know than to say I know what I don't know.
Let's put it this way, Idris. I have a question to ask you that's been bothering me. You did not come back to make those same points to Dr. Imran or Brother Abbas. You thought about what they had to say, and you chose to come back on the program. Am I correct?
Yes.
What was the leading thought in returning here?
I wanted to follow up with some of the points they had last time.
Why?
Because I'm on a journey of self-discovery and discovering learning. I want to learn more about
what have you discovered technically? What have you discovered that led you? Because here's the thing, you could have just used Google. You could have watched a YouTube video. But what led you back here to have a conversation with Dr. Imran or Brother Abbas?
Because I respect their opinion.
Right. So what does that tell you? It tells you that they're not interested in the views. They're not interested in hearing their own thoughts. We're interested in real conversations. As you coming back here, we have to ask the question, is there something like motivating you? I want to quote the previous guest, something self-propelling you to come back here. What would that motivation be? You said it's self-discovery. Is there something in particular that you've discovered that you would like to share with us? Something that has been profound in your mind, perhaps? Something that has poked you? What is there that's poking you is what I want to know.
To speak with you all today?
There must be something beyond that.
In general?
Yeah. There must be.
I think human beings are naturally curious about our world. We want to understand the world around us,
Okay,
and
so
we
I'm
find that through
curious.
challenging. I'm saying through challenging ideas and
Beliefs.
discourse, we can learn more about our world and the way we
Okay.
think.
So, do you think that anything that Dr. Imran has said is irrational? Anything he said up until this point?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. No, he seems like a reasonable person,
He
right?
does. Don't ask him about anything I said, please. Yeah.
Oh no, come on. No.
It might get embarrassing.
I haven't heard. I don't think I've heard anything really irrational now.
Just leave it with Imran.
Go ahead.
No, don't say that. The point I'm getting back is that here in Islam, right, we have a motivation, right, which is that Allah calls us to learn more about the world and to learn more about ourselves. But there's a specific point in the Quran where Allah mentions that if we forget Him, we lose ourselves. And so I have to ask, does remembrance of Allah compared to simply adhering to naturalism, is there a difference in the consequences from following one or the other?
Sure.
So when you spoke with Dr. Imran, you said that naturalism can lead to some very specific negative things, right?
I said that naturalism can lead to negative things.
When you get into specificities about
I say
humans
when you get very
Yeah.
reductionistic, then
Yes.
certain things seem weird and strange.
Yeah, but that's a necessary consequence of scientism,
Sure.
isn't it? You said
Yeah,
it's
sure.
curiosity, right? But now let me
Mhm.
replace that with Islam. At what point
Mhm.
does it come irrational?
What point? I don't think it's necessarily rational.
But what is the necessary conclusion we come from adhering to the mindset that Islam, provides us with? It gives us a scope of intelligible reasoning to understand the universe, to understand each other. And so if I had to compare one against the other, wouldn't one be obviously more reasonable than the other?
Sure.
I-
I think you can definitely make that argument. I just
So
don't.
I made the argument.
find-
I made the
I just-
argument, right? So which one would you say is more reasonable? Be honest. You can disagree. No one's going to bite you here much.
I feel that the naturalistic approach is more reasonable
Okay.
because it
So-
does. It can.
Uh-huh.
It acknowledges the limitations of the ability to gain knowledge, and
But in Islam, we
does-
do the same. We say that there's naql, that there's ilm al-ghaib, knowledge of the unseen, that the human
Yeah.
experience is only so much, and we need a greater level of, we need someone who has a greater scope of knowledge. And we say that that is Allah. We're not saying God of the gaps here, but let's consider a question now, with the situation in Palestine. If I take a scientism point of view on this, these are just atoms interacting with atoms at the end of the day. There is no inherent value to the life of a child and a bomb dropping on it. Am I correct? No inherent value.
Yeah, things are kind of weird when you scope things that
No.
way. But yes, if you
In
kind
any
of separate
scientific
the
view.
mind from the heart,
But in the
Yes, you
scientific
can-
view, just atoms
you
and
can-
molecules, right? It's
sure,
just
but we
atoms and
we
molecules.
don't live that way. I live as a human being that has
Right. So
emotions
then you
and
live.
empathy, right?
Yes, great. So we say
Yeah.
then that this is more than just pure scientism, because you don't say that your love is just chemicals, interacting with each other.
Yeah. Like if I see
There
my
is
daughter, I don't
meaning.
think, the chemicals and endorphins and
Exactly.
oxytocin are doing all these things, right?
Exactly.
I experience it, right?
Right. So Islam explains that. It says that Allah gave us these things so that we may come to know each other. That makes
Yeah.
sense to me. But
I know, but that's like an
focus with me.
explanation.
I know,
I
but
know the
focus with me.
explanation is congruent, but I don't
Oh.
think that it's necessary to explain the things I don't understand with.
But
like,
it
a
is.
God.
It explains love,
I know.
morality, ethics,
I know it
and value.
explains.
It explains. There's one thing that science can't explain, and that's human value.
Sure,
Right.
absolutely.
Right. So,
I agree.
But if you live your life as a human, and scientism cannot explain human value.
No,
then
I
it
don't live
makes
my life as
sense.
scientism. I don't.
That's
I
what I'm
don't live my
saying.
life as scientism.
That's what I'm saying. So you
Yeah,
acknowledge
you're right.
that in your lived actions, Idris. You do.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I'm Muslim, because my lived actions make sense in Islam rather
Yeah.
than outside of Islam.
Yeah.
Do you
Idris,
disagree with that?
you know, Idris,
Sorry,
can I just
go ahead.
ask you something? And again, you can disagree if you want to. Obviously, there's no pressure. But so far, your discussion with Imran and with Ijaz, it seems like emotional reasons rather than logical reasons.
I don't think so. Why do you say that?
Because I don't believe you've provided a single logical argument to justify your position. It just seems better to you. You just think it seems to be better, but there's no.
Could I?
Sorry, go on. Ijaz.
No, Brother Abbas is right, because when we asked you to give us something, an example of where naturalism is more intelligible than what Islam teaches, you just said it just makes sense. And you know, this is the argument by assertion. This is what Brother Abbas is pointing out. I was waiting for an example, but you repeated that point. Brother Abbas, please continue. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's mashallah, jazakallah khair. So Idris, you know, what I'd like to do, obviously without prying too much into your personal life, because I think one thing that we realize, the mind generally arrives at places often because of, you know, baggage, life.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know, experiences, you know, nurture, nature, all of these things have a huge impact. And they're not necessarily based upon analytical or empirical evidences and decisions, or even overwhelming, let's say, evidences or arguments for a particular position. So if I could ask you, like, you know, how old were you when you sort of decided perhaps to leave Islam? What age was that?
I guess it was just in the past couple of years, I just became more and more aware of that I didn't have good reasons for really believing in what I had.
And were you practicing before that? Were you praying and learning your, you know, were you on some sort of a formal or informal learning as well of your religion and what have you?
Yeah.
And would your spouse and your family generally, are they all Muslims?
Yep.
So now, a couple of years ago, you said that you sort of moved away from Islam. What else was going on in your life at that time? Did you have a career change? Did you have did you meet somebody? What was it that changed in your life around that time?
I can't think of anything in particular. I know that I think I was maybe around that time reading more about maybe the historical critical aspects of the Quran, and maybe reading more about like Robert Sapolsky and free will, behavior, maybe reading more about evolution, things like that. And then maybe just little things here and there where like maybe my in-laws were like, oh my God, dogs are dirty and this and that, and you know, just rituals. And I was like, well, why is this? Like, this seems kind of silly. And you know, and I used to remember when I had studied in fact, I used to teach Sunday school as a young man, like the proofs of the Quran and the numerology and the Muhammad, you know, peace be upon him, like, you know, liar, you know, prophet, or, you know, sick, you know, like the fraud, you know, which of these, I guess it's kind of a false choice options. And I felt that was a rock solid case. But then when I saw that there were, you know, embryology, when a lot of those had been sort of maybe, if not necessarily debunked, but challenged reasonably well, I feel like a lot of that eroded some of the reasons that I thought I had.
So, you know, Idris, one of the things that Dr. Imran and I do, and is not to sort of boost ourselves up at all. I mean, we don't spend much time at all. It's just very little time actually. But with Sapiens Institute, they have a service which is called mentoring, basically for Muslims generally who have doubts or have problems. One of the consistent things that seems to come up a lot is that people look at material that is fundamentally orchestrated and created to create doubts within Muslims. Now, one could argue that they're just challenging Islam or they're just giving their view, but a lot of these places are often funded, and they're, when you look at their foundational core, beliefs and things, it's fundamentally to really just challenge Islam.
Sure.
The problem with that approach of learning or investigating is twofold. Number one is that it's not a sincere place to be going to attain knowledge about Islam. That's the first thing. Ordinarily, that's not a problem if the second criteria is actually satisfied and already in place, which is that you already have either the knowledge or the time and the ability to decipher those arguments for yourself. And a lot of people tend to have the stumbling block on the second point. They either don't have the time necessary, or they don't, and they don't have the knowledge, or perhaps even the passion or the desire to do so, you see. And so then what happens is that those doubts that were seeds that are planted within the hearts of the people who access those things, over time they grow, and eventually the journey takes a person to actually end up leaving Islam altogether. The iman is shattered, it weakens, and then they start to think about things that actually are not necessarily empirical things. Like, so for example, in terms of not eating pork, for example, from a purely materialistic point of view, scientific point of view, you could argue that, well, if you raise the pigs in a certain way and you eradicate, parasites and these worms that they have, etc., etc., and if you cook it beyond a certain temperature, then all those things are killed. So in reality, what's the sense in not eating pork, you see? But see, from a rational point of view, you could argue, from a non-theistic point of view, you could argue it just makes no sense, basically. But then from a theistic point of view, from an Islamic point of view, Allah has ordained certain things, and Allah tells us why Allah has ordained.
Okay with that. No, those things I'm okay with. I mean, like, one of them, for example, I remember there was the Whammy book had said, and mashallah, the number of days mentioned in the Quran, Yom is 365 days exactly. And then I went and checked, and it's not that. So it's just things like that, and it may have been created by people that are anti-Islam. I don't know, but
but the point is that even if you go back and study that within the grammar, what you find is that there is a different term used for day and days. And when you look at the numbering, when it's specific to either day or days, then actually it does conform. But if you count all references to days, a day's plural, day singular, what have you, then some. So what I'm trying to say to you is that,
maybe I don't need to dig into that, but go ahead.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that, Idris, even if for argument's sake a Muslim makes a claim about the days and day or whatever, and let's say, for example, the Muslim makes a mistake and he attributes something that actually might not be true, let's say, for argument's sake. Yes. How does that falsify Islam?
It really doesn't. No, but it doesn't. No, and that's not what I'm saying. That doesn't falsify Islam, and not at all. But I'm just saying, in my mind, as like a young adult, I remember reading those things, and later on, in my personal mind, those had some weight, those had gravity. And then at some point those were eroded. But your point, that's not something that falsifies Islam.
And so you see, that's why, Idris, I go back to my initial point, which is that these seem like emotional arguments because you've clearly raised something, so it's significant to you in some capacity, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But in reality, that aspect doesn't change the reality of whether Islam is true or not. And yet it was important for you, yet it had an impact upon you see. And so that's why I'm saying to you, brother, that what I would like you to do is forget about what Muslims have claimed about these numerical miracles or what have you, there are other objective reasons to believe the Quran is indeed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I would say that the grammatical miracles of the Quran, the very structure of the language itself. I like the example that Brother Mansour from Dawah Wise gave, that, you know, Arabic is like, you know, the Arabic is the same language, right? The classical Arabic.
Yeah.
So it's like bricks building up a house. And it's the same bricks, the same word sort of thing, the similar words. But here you have a house that's actually built without cement. The bricks are all floating on top of each other. Yet it still created this house. And this is the comparison that Brother Mansour made. I thought it was quite a good comparison, actually, because what he's saying is that similar words, same words in many cases, yet the way that it's constructed and the way that those words are formed and the way that the linguistic principles and rules of how those words join together is completely unique. And that's where one of the inimitability challenges of the Quran is. And so you have many Christian Arabs for the last 14 centuries who could have easily come up with works. There are many Muslims or non-Muslims at the time of the Prophet ﷺ that could have easily met this challenge, that you can't even, as Allah reduces the challenge from the entire Quran to 10 chapters to but just one chapter. And by the way, I've put the link in the private chat for you about Surah Al-Kawthar, which is the challenge that one of the aspects, one of the facets of challenge of the Quran, about Surah Al-Kawthar, which is just 3 verses, by the way. I believe those
I
are
may
more
have actually read that one, but
yeah. And those are more objective, I would say. They're less subjective. And when one studies, and we have a plethora of evidences, historical evidences, manuscript evidences, multiple attested documents ending up in different locations of the world saying that similar or very similar or same things, for example, we could be quite sure actually about the history. And as many non-Muslim academics have said, that...
excuse me.
Sorry, Idris, go ahead.
I do need to run, but thank you so much for publishing those links. I'll definitely
so do copy those links, Idris, and
on.
maybe we can continue our conversation. And one last thing, I'll just quickly ask you very quickly. I know you've got to go in a hurry, but let's say you're on an airplane. You're in America, right?
Yeah.
You're flying from New York to Seattle. It's a long flight. You're halfway through the flight. You're at 37,000 feet, and one of the wings falls off the aircraft.
Yeah. Tell
me what you're going to do, Idris.
I really don't know. I don't know.
I want you to think about that, and we'll have our conversation.
Oh, dude, I have. I just don't know. Like, no one knows what they'll do until that happens, right?
Surprisingly, many people start turning to the very God that they.
It's certainly possible that people that it's certainly reasonable. Yeah. And I really appreciate it.
All right, Idris. Nice to speak to you.
Great talking to y'all.
All the best. Muslims. So I just want to make a point so that and I hope Idris can come back and maybe listen to this bit of it. So what's really important from this conversation, Brother Abbas, that you had with Brother Idris, is the way that we go about establishing the truth of Islam for ourselves and maybe our children and our family members. If you get to the stage where you it's these little trinkets of information that you rely on as being your foundation. Oh, look, it says the Quran says this many numbers here. So somebody's put forward that you haven't checked yourself, some little statement that's made that's where you base your iman on, and your as soon as somebody, actually that person made a mistake, and like you said, it doesn't denote anything about the Quran or Islam, but you start to lose your faith. It means that you had the reason for your belief was not the correct way of. It wasn't based upon the right foundations.
Yeah.
So the foundations have to be correct, and really they are that. The belief in God, and then understanding why Islam is true, why the Prophet, peace be upon him, is truthful, why the Quran is something that we believe in, how we establish its reliability. So you have to talk about, you have to establish for yourself reasons why Islam is true that are not something that's whimsical or flimsy, or do you understand? And I think if you get to that stage where, again, this is the same approach, where it's some sort of numerical or scientific thing in your mind, because you mentioned about embryology being there's no refutation of any Islamic embryology anywhere.
No.
So just to make that point clear, but the whole point was that your foundation was in the wrong place. And if you try and build your house upon sand, then don't be surprised if that house falls down, even with the slightest of winds. And this is where we really have to and this is why it's really important for the youth to be involved in lessons and things that establish your foundations very, very well, so that then when you come across, because science changes all the time, it could, for 1400 years, 1400 years, it was the universe was eternal,
static
and eternal, unchanging. And then the Quran talks about the heavens expanding and the universe expanding. So it was wrong for in 1400 years? No, eventually the science corrected itself and or got closer to the truth, and it's come up with the other idea that now comports with Islamic, it complies with the Islamic paradigm. So again, if my foundation was science is the way, scientism is the way, it would have shaken my belief in Islam if that was my foundation. But I know, knowing the limits of foundation and its framework and how to use it, I know that I can't use it as a tool, because it's a ruler that's doing it. Every 10, 15 minutes, it's changing, and depending on which theory you look at, the measurements differ and the size differs, and so the same object that I'm measuring can be, this is a meter. Oh no, it's 2 meters. Oh no, it's 4 meters. It's just because my ruler is changing. And people.
That's a very important point. Actually, that's a very important point. That and it's a point actually that I learned perhaps the hard way myself. So many years ago. I'm talking about I was I think I was 13 or 14, so we're talking about dinosaur times. We're talking about when dinosaurs were still, I think the asteroid hadn't even hit yet.
Well, that's probably after COVID, isn't it? So
probably, yeah. So I remember my uncle, may Allah bless him and give him paradise, from Pakistan. He came down in a Jamaat here at a mosque, and I remember having this book. And it had all these scientific aspects of what the Quran is saying and what science is saying. Very colorful book. I think it's still around, actually. It's about a 70-page book. And he said something very interesting to me. Not my uncle, actually, it was one of his colleagues. He said to me that we do not base our iman, our belief, on these things. He said they're interesting. He said they're interesting, but we don't tie our belief onto these things. Because if tomorrow science changes its opinion on something, and you've basically, in effect, he didn't say it in this way, but you've pinned your flag to the mast and said, this is what the Quran means specifically, and you translate it and you interpret it to fit a particular scientific, phenomena or theory or whatever, and then the theory changes. It's perhaps dishonest to do it that way anyway. As Muslims, we shouldn't do it that way. And B, it's going to obviously shake your iman, because you're now attributing that is precisely what the Quran is talking about. And now someone is telling you within the scientific field that, it's changed. And, it shakes your iman. And so it's a very important point. And about embryology and these things, brother, if you're still listening, there are many aspects of embryology actually that people thought it was right, then they thought it was wrong. Now science is saying actually, especially about the bones and the flesh clothing the bones and these type of things that are being used, right? But actually the latest science is now once again reconfirming what the Quran said. So what's a Muslim going to do? Is his iman going to be doing this every time the scientific theory evolves and changes? So it's very, very important. I think that the Quran claims to be a miracle. Yes, there are lots of facets of miracles within the Quran, but I think we should also be honest about it. And I do like some of the explanations that the brothers have given. It's not to say that the Quran doesn't touch on aspects of nature, aspects of things that we find within the natural world or in the universe as a whole. But we should be clear from the very beginning that, look, these are some of the interpretations of these verses. These ones do not line up with science. These ones have lined up with science, but there is always a scope of meaning. Some I think are quite, I would say, in a way, it says we are expanding the heavens. I mean, I think that's fairly explicit, and we are expanding it, referring to, I mean, that's quite explicit, but there are certain other things that could potentially be interpreted in different ways. And we also know that the Arabic grammar, the Arabic language, that a word, depending upon the context, can mean sometimes different things as well. So we should be honest and fair, and not necessarily translate something with the intention to make it fit something that's already out there, because I think that's not an honest way of doing it. Now, okay, so we've got the stream is generally for non-Muslims, but if one or two Muslims would like to come on, it's not an issue. But if you are non-Muslim and you'd like to come on, I know it's Christmas Eve and most of you are probably busy with family and friends and what have you, but if you're alone and you don't have anybody perhaps to visit or to talk to, there's the link. Just click on the link. It's in the chat, and it's also in at the bottom of the video on YouTube. We'd love to have a little chat with you. I think one of the things that Imran that definitely seemed to come out, and this is not with any disrespect to the brother, he seems like quite sincere. He seems very cordial, very nice, very well-mannered, and it's a nice conversation with him. But the arguments that he was making, with all respect to the brother, they were very emotional arguments. Because when I would question him about the specifics as to, for example, the Huberman, comparison, that here you have somebody who's looking at the data, who's an expert within that, who's actually saying it, for him, it points to a creator. For somebody else, it perhaps doesn't point to a creator. And therefore, that's not the yardstick or the measuring tape to be using to define whether one accepts the existence of a creator or not. It doesn't lead to certainty, therefore. I mean, he would accept that, but then he's still referring to aspects of science. I just found that a little bit unusual, really.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with. So what usually happens is, in my experience, is that something else has occurred to throw the person off of their journey, their Islam, if, for example. So the brother talked about, I mean, that's not a scientific claim about 365 days, but it's just some claim that someone made, and he's looked at it and he found a source that says it wasn't true, and that affected him. So this is obviously when he was quite young. What's then happened is that he's become much more, and this is not about him personally, but generally, we become very, if we in a field that's very scientific.
I don't think he was quite young. He said a couple of years ago. I think from his video, he already.
No. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's say like a couple of years ago. I think if a couple of years ago your reason for your believing Islam is true is because of the number of days, how many times it says days, then there was big issues there. And that's the same about your foundation being correct. But let's take that at the face value. The whole point is that usually the rationalizations come later. Something puts you off, whatever that is. Either your foundations aren't right, or you've been mistreated in some way, or as a combination of these things, and then you end up, or you delve into a field which is very heavily scientifically based methodology, and that becomes your worldview. Then you usually end up in a place where you view everything through that paradigm, and that can lead you into sort of a place where you start denying everything that isn't empirically amenable, and that's the position that often we find. But that rationalization comes later, and there's an assumption that just because of the Western experience with religion, that this is sometimes something that we can then tar all religions with the same crimes. So Christianity has a lot, and particularly Catholicism has a lot to say, a lot to answer to, because of the things that is done to people of a scientific persuasion. And that's where the war hypothesis has come from, and we see a lot of that. But we were talking about the consequences of having this belief that only the natural world exists and everything else is. And let me just read you quote. So we were talking about Skopolsky there. A brother mentioned him as someone who writes about free will, but we know that Sam Harris wrote this pamphlet. It's not really a book; it's like literally a few pages, And I just listen to this. It's and I'll give you my comments at the side. It says you are not in control of your mind because you are, as a conscious agent, only a part of your mind, living at the mercy of other parts. You can do what you decide to do, but you cannot decide to do what you decide to do. And you know what my comment is next to that? Gibberish. Absolute gibberish.
Yeah.
And let me read another. If this is page 38, if anyone wants to read it, let me read another quote. Choices, efforts, intentions, and reasoning influence our behavior, but they are themselves part of a chain of causes that precede conscious awareness, and over which we exert no ultimate control. My choices matter, and there are paths that make a path towards making wiser ones, but I cannot choose what I choose. And if it appears that I do, for instance, after going back and forth between two options, I do not choose to choose what I choose. You know what my comment is next to that?
More gibberish.
That's exactly what I've written. Choices matter, but you can't choose. I mean, this is the consequence of having a materialist view, a materialist worldview, and then assuming that everything you have to have has to empirically map onto some sort of scientific framework, and everything's reductionist. And in reality, if everything is material, then we're just, even my words that I'm saying are not in my control. And you take someone like this seriously? It's just
and the thing is, Imran, I mean, like you were saying about, for example, what's happening in Palestine, or was it Brother Ijaz who was saying, that in effect, why would you be emotional about seeing a child blown up and its limbs flying off its body and blood being splattered on the wall? Why would you care? It's a rearrangement of atoms. It was just rearranged in a different way. So in effect, it has no moral consequence whatsoever. You can argue, oh no, from an evolutionary point of view, colluding together, it means there's optimum survival. So as a consequence, it's better not to do those things. But ultimately, what if a person says, like at the moment, clearly the IDF and the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin, genocidal Netanyahu, that they're all guilty. They all need to basically be punished. They all need to be eradicated. We need to flatten Gaza, basically. I don't believe that you could have a moral stance based upon any objectivity. I'm not saying you can't have morals, by the way, because there are atheists out there, clearly, or people of no religion or agnostic or whatever, who are, great campaigners for peace, and they don't want to see war, and they try to lead very moral lives and what have you. I'm not saying that morality is void in that sense from those people. We're not saying that. We're not claiming that. But we're saying that how can they argue from any objective grounds other than it feels really bad? What objective grounds do you have to say that what is happening there is an injustice? Why is genocide an injustice? Why is ethnic cleansing an injustice? Just to say, well, it's attacking the weak, or so what? A person can say, so what? A person can say that, look, if we are the product of a primordial soup, a collection of biogenesis, some atoms came together and chemicals came together and life somehow sprung into action, then just like the lion tears apart the gazelle to survive, just as the crocodile tears apart its victim that goes to drink from the watering hole, why can't I, just because I'm more intelligent, why can't I do the same to other people, to other communities? And the reality is, it is only when you have a higher being, a creator of the heavens and the earth, that has laid down moral laws that become objectively wrong or right, that one can argue, because from a Muslim point of view, I can't argue, oh, it's a horrible thing, it feels really bad, it really upsets me to see these things, that's why I don't want them to happen. For us, it's very clear. And by the way, those things are true. But for us, it's very, very clear that the creator of the heavens and the earth has made explicit teachings available to us and guidance to us, indicating that such activity is not only forbidden, not only is it haram for us to do, to target deliberately civilians, to deliberately target children, to deliberately target women, to deliberately target places of worship, or even animals for that matter, is a sin that's going to be something that we're going to be accountable for. And in fact, we will be questioned for and potentially punished for, is why we say that it is completely forbidden and wrong to do so. So from a purely materialistic stance, none of that really makes sense. Morality is very, very fluid. And depending upon what part of the world you live in and where your culture and how your culture goes, that's where your moral stance, moral standards will go. And of course, how is it then possible then for some white people here or some brown people there to start judging one another in terms of morality and decency? Is it just might is right? What basis do you base that on? So I think fundamentally, Doctor, and I think it does raise some very important points as well about the fact that when you are religious and you believe in religion and you believe in God, and in particular, of course, for us to believe in Islam, it then gives you the clarity, it gives you the roadmap, as it were, for your existence, why you're here, what your purpose is here, and where you are going. It gives you clarity on that point. It gives you the standard of what is now right or wrong. It gives you the standard of what is just or unjust. It gives you the standard of what is fair or unfair, So, I mean, that is now for us, in any case, that would be from an objective source. So as I said, guys, this stream is for non-Muslims, but if you are Muslim and you'd like to have a chat, in the last perhaps hour, we'll give you a chance to come on. The link is in the chat as well. I'll just put it in the chat again. And we've got over 500 people viewing. The likes are somewhat less than the viewership, so we would like you to please like the video so you can share the video as well, so it gets better coverage. And just a quick reminder to brothers and sisters is that especially a lot of our videos, when it relates to Palestine, those videos, a lot of them are being shadow banned. So on some of the videos, we were getting 180,000 views a day, and then it's fallen to like hundreds. And it's a shame because, all this false, information that we were being fed about why we should have been tolerant about people drawing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and wearing T-shirts with vile, vulgar comments and pictures. And all of that abuse was being wrapped up in this, what is indeed a noble, potentially noble quality of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Actually, we've now realized, I think most of us already knew anyway, but it's become completely apparent now that those freedoms of speech and freedom of expression only seem to be extended to people that are in agreement with the status quo, with the powers to be. And as soon as you step out of line, then of course, those freedoms are quashed and those voices are quashed. And it's surprising, actually, that people who are standing against war, standing against the killing and the abusing and the mass exodus that's been created because of this vile, violent, oppressive, genocidal regime, those are the people, the ones who are speaking out against it are the ones who are being silenced. And the ones that are banging the drums of war or are excusing those very actions, those vile actions, are the ones whose posts are not being shadow banned and they're being given platforms. So I just find that really, really hypocritical. And I think in future, when people say freedom of speech and freedom of expression, I'm going to have to try to hold my lunch in, quite frankly, because the level of hypocrisy is incredible. One of the other things, Doctor, that really does resonate is that, the Quran talks about the Jews and the Christians. And of course, we're told about having cordial relationships with people and being just towards people. Don't, as you mentioned earlier, do not let your animosity or your hatred for a people make you unjust. Allah talks about justice many, many times. We have the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he's making a judgment between a Jew and a Muslim, and he actually sides with the Jew, and he tells the Muslim, give him what is due. So we're told about this justice, this fairness, and there are so many other teachings. But the Quran says something very interesting, that do not take them as your allies, because they are allies to one another. And we used to get mocked all the time. Oh, you Muslims, you Muslims don't want to be our friends. We love you, the Christians and the Jews. We will love you. We want to hug you. Yes. Where are your hugs now? Where's all that love now? We have the Western governments. We have the Western media. Thankfully, there are a lot of Western people who are very, very vocal when it comes to what's happening in Palestine. But the governments, the media, it's an entire, a colluding of all of these political powers and media, and they are colluding with the genocidal Israel and what Israel is doing to the Palestinian people. And who are the allies? They've become allies of one another, to justify, to sanctify, to excuse the genocide and the ethnic cleansing that is happening to the Palestinian people. And believe you me, most of us do not see the videos that, in terms of what is truly reflective of what is happening in Palestine. Because believe you me, when these bombs fall, you're literally talking about shrapnel that is flying, sharp bits and chunks of metal that are traveling at hundreds of miles per hour in all directions, that are literally severing limbs, legs off, arms off, heads off, entire bodies being blitzed into pieces. And many of us do not see the aftermath, when the injured are screaming in pain and suffering whilst they're bleeding to death. We don't see those videos, most of us. But that's what they're allying with. That is what they're supporting happening to our Palestinian brothers and sisters. And when I say Palestinian brothers and sisters, I include the Christians in there. They are also our brothers and sisters in humanity. And this type of massacre and merciless killing. So when any Christian or any Jew or any atheist or anyone brings up this verse again, that they are allies to one another, I'm going to just bring up this episode of what's happened here and what's been happening throughout history, quite frankly. Because whenever it's allying against the Muslims, they seem to ally with one another to cause the maximum destruction of the Muslim lands. And I've mentioned this before as well. Doctor, 4.8 million Muslims lost their lives just on the war on terror. This war on terror, 4.8 million lives. Now, just imagine, I think Wembley Stadium has a capacity of 120,000, Doctor? Maybe 100,000? You look at some of the largest football stadiums in the world, and they're at around 100, 120,000, the largest football stadiums. And when the goal is scored, the roar of those people, because there's so many people, it's thundering. Well, multiply that by 48 times. Multiply that football stadium by 48 times. That's the number of innocent people they killed in the Muslim world on the war on terror. And then multiply that by probably 4 or 5 times. So possibly 100 stadiums or 150 stadiums worth of people who were injured, many of whom with life-changing, disabilities. And then add to that another possibly 50 or 100 stadiums of the uranium-tipped missiles that were thrown in Iraq that are still causing cancer and deformity in their babies. Yes, you heard that right. Depleted uranium-tipped armaments were flung. In other words, they got rid of their radioactive waste by putting them inside missiles and then dropping them on some other poor soul all the way in Iraq. Those are the sort of horrors that we're talking about. And so those people are not condemned. Their videos, by the way, who support those wars and support Israel and support the massacres, their videos are not censored. They're not reduced. They're not limited. But, EFDawah, Ali Dawah, Brother Ali Dawah, Brother Muhammad the Hijab, Dawah Wise, all of these other channels that are showing these things that are happening. Suddenly you have shadow banning. Jake, the metaphysician, he's done some great work on this as well. He's being shadow banned as well. Quite frankly, it's just utterly deplorable. But sorry, I've gone into a bit of a rant there, Doctor. Do you want to add anything before we get the next guest on?
No, please, let's verify the next guest and we can move forward.
Guys, if you can please have your cameras on. There's a few of you that are backstage. If we could just interact with you for a few seconds, and that's for legal reasons. We need to just record who we're going to have onto the channel. We can obviously track IP addresses and what have you, and just to make sure things stay clean, things stay legal, basically. So Nazareth, if you want to put your camera on, Umar S. Shabazz, your device is not connected for legal reasons. We just need to identify you. You can turn your camera off before you come on. Nazareth, if you could just give me a thumbs up, if that's okay. That's fantastic. You can turn your camera off now, brother, and we're going to get you on. We're going to get you on now. So Nazareth, welcome to the stream. You just need to unmute yourself, Nazareth.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, brother. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah. I would like to ask one question. Is that fine?
Please go ahead. Are you Muslim, brother Nazareth?
Yes. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Okay.
I would like to ask one question, and inshallah, I'm going to pray. I'm here in America, so we pray in Maghrib, inshallah, soon, in 5 minutes.
No problem. Ask your question, brother.
Okay. So my question is that are the prophets, are they like a sinless, or do they have, are they sinless like a prophetess? All prophets from Adam to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So the question is, are prophets sinless?
Yeah.
The answer to that is that the prophets did make minor mistakes, but they were forgiven for those mistakes. But they did not commit any major sin, basically.
Okay.
So in the previous scriptures, there is unfortunately prophets are accused of committing incest, or they're committing lies and deception and getting people killed to marry people and things like that. We don't believe that the prophets did any of those things. We believe that they were the highest of moral standard, so much so that none of us can ever become even close to the level of the prophets that Allah has bestowed upon us.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, brothers. That's the only question that I had.
Not a problem.
Thank you so much, brothers. Well, when I forget other question because I know I'm alive, so I forgot it. So inshallah, maybe when I remind, I come back another stream. Inshallah.
Not a problem.
Thank you so much, my brothers.
Remember us in your dua after your Maghrib Salah, inshallah.
Inshallah. May Allah give you Jannah. May Allah, inshallah, wa ta'ala, help our brothers in Palestine who are also struggling in Gaza, because I watched a video, my brother, on a Facebook, and that was somebody recorded. I saw this Palestinian like a youth. They were in their 20s. They were playing,
and then all of a sudden this tank of Israelis came. It was, I think, Gaza or somewhere, and they like started like shooting them, you know, like firing at them, and they all ran except like one, you know, guy, and he was shot on the leg, and they came on top of him like a person who was injured, who were just, you know, joking, having a tea, and they come on top of him, wallahi, and they just executed him at the spot.
SubhanAllah. May Allah make it easy for our brothers and sisters. I mean,
it was sad. It was really sad.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Nazareth, for coming on. Okay. Doctor, I was watching a program yesterday on the writer for The Guardian, Owen Jones, and he was interviewing a Christian man, and he was talking about, I think it was his grandmother or his aunt, an old lady in her 80s. And she was insisting that she wanted to go back home. And they basically told her that it's not safe, she shouldn't go. But I think she suspected she sneaked out. And now this is an 84-year-old lady, doctor, yeah? And before she managed to get home, a sniper shot her just below the knee. And this is a tactic that the Christian brother was saying that they use because they want that person to live. They want them to die slowly. And what they want is that that person will scream out and ask for help. And when the other people go there to help, they will basically meet the same fate. And then once she had actually died the next day through bleeding out, an 84-year-old lady, doctor, yeah, they ran a tank over her. So there'd be nothing left to recover. I mean, this is the level of inhumanity and utter contempt that they are showing. And, you know, before people start saying, oh, this is propaganda, these are lies, these are just things that people who hate Israel or hate Jews are making up. You can look at the videos that the Israeli soldiers are posting. You can look at what Israeli soldiers themselves are saying themselves as what they're doing. You can look at what the politicians are saying. You can look at what the media there are saying. And, you know, you don't have to even look at what Muslims are saying or Christians are saying or Palestinians are saying. Just look at what the Israeli soldiers, look at the organization breaking the silence, where Israeli soldiers are telling basically people, to the world that, look, these are the sort of things that we're doing. These are the sort of things that we have been doing. So that we can't even imagine the brutality that's going on there. And wallahi, I've never seen a people in my life that are that resilient and that strong. I have never seen children. There was a video of a little girl. I mean, subhanallah, somebody posted. Maybe I can get the link and post the link. It's a little girl, and she spoke with such vigor, such passion, such bravery, so much bravery that I found it incredible, really. The resilience that she said, we will die in this land, but we will not leave this land. This is our land. You know, you can do America, Britain, you can do whatever you want to help Israel to do. But she said, Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for us as an aid, as a help. A 5-year-old, a 5-year-old was saying this. And I just thought, subhanallah, may Allah bless these people. They are truly, Allah has blessed them with a level of iman and a level of connection that only we can really just wish for and dream of, FN, thank you for putting your camera on. Can you just give me a quick wave and then we can get you on, brother? And you can turn your camera off if you like, or you can leave your camera on, whatever you're comfortable with. FN, welcome to the stream, brother. You just need to unmute yourself, brother.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Assalamu alaikum, Abbas bhai, Ijaz.
How are you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm good. I just
Well,
wanted to,
Ben,
say,
just a quick question. The angle of your camera, it looks like you're very tall. I thought that was your ceiling. I thought, my God, this brother's like 8'5", 8'6" or something. But
no, no, no. I'm
see
just
that you're lying
medium
down.
height.
I'm just joking. Go on. Sorry. One of my corny bad jokes. Please go ahead.
It was just a further time, so I just had offered my salah and joined you guys. I just want to say my salam to you, EFDawah team. And yeah, I mean, whenever I join any kind of a panelist, I'm just, I just go blank. So sorry about that. I
Not a
don't
problem.
have any
Where,
question.
whereabouts are you from? Whereabouts are you from?
I'm from Singapore.
Oh,
At the moment,
Singapore,
I'm in
mashallah.
Singapore.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've heard Singapore is a very beautiful country, mashallah.
it is. It is. It is one of the cleanest and crime-free and wonderful country. Actually,
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
lucky,
So,
lucky
brother,
to be in.
there's no need to be nervous. There's only 535 people watching us, and once we finish, there might only be like 10 or 15,000. Hopefully, that'll watch the show. But there's no reason to be nervous. So please ask your question, whatever question you have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm regularly watching your stream. I, since you started during the COVID days, and I was, watching it. I came one or two times to say salam to the team. So, yeah, just a quick question. I think I remember. Like, it means sometimes I find that what we are doing, like, means Allah Subhanahu wa Taala send us to this world, not just to ask help from Allah, like supplications. Uh, we should, there has to be, we need to do something first and then ask help for Allah. It's not only to to make dua to Allah all the time, right? So this thing I feel like means we need to do step something first and then ask Allah to help us. So what we have done now, like we are just asking help from Allah instead of doing anything, because we are Khalifa of Allah on earth. Then we have to implement. It's not like, if Allah wanted to do it, he can do it. He can hear everybody, he can see everybody. But I think we have made him like, that if we ask for help, if we ask for supplication, if we do supplication, and then Allah will help, right? It's not like so we don't have to do anything. It's just, let's leave it everything to Allah. That's what I'm feeling at the moment. That's what is happening.
Yeah, I mean, so we have teachings in Islam clearly that actually allude to this point, that you have to do everything in your capacity, and then you rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when the companion comes in and he has left his camel to roam, and he says, Tawakkal to Allah, Allah will protect, Allah protects. The Prophet, peace be upon him, instructed him, tie your camel first, and then say Tawakkal to Allah. When Maryam alayhi salam is in the Quran, we're told that she's in the pangs of childbirth. She's leaning against a date palm. She's instructed to shake the date palm so that the dates will fall and that she can then gain some comfort. Now, why does she have to shake the date palm? Allah could just throw the dates down to her. All of these things are an example to us. They're all a teaching to us that we have to do whatever we can do to change our circumstances, but ultimately we leave it up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then whether that thing materializes or doesn't materialize, we are still grateful and thankful, and we accept the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is actually our religion, alhamdulillah. And because of that, actually, if we really adhere to those teachings, then there cannot be disappointment for us. Because when something doesn't happen that we wanted to happen, we know that despite trying our best, of course, we're not talking about being complacent. We're not talking about, and mashallah, brothers are putting, brother Elias has put some verses of the Quran clearly alluding to that. We're not to be lazy and complacent and then just say, oh, this was the will of Allah. We have to try our best, of course. But the point is that when we have disappointment, i.e. something doesn't happen, then we can turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we can say, Alhamdulillah, that Ya Allah, I am grateful to you. All praise be to you. And I am happy with what you have decreed. And in that sabr, in that patience, is goodness for you, is benefit for you in this world and in the hereafter. So, alhamdulillah, these are our teachings. Doctor, would you like to allude to anything on top of that, to what I've mentioned?
Alhamdulillah, I think you've answered. Just to add an interesting observation, have you ever seen a date palm?
Yeah, recently I was in Medina. Yes, I've seen one.
Just describe it to me.
So it's a tree with the it's a tree with the all the dates attached to it.
How big was it? How wide was the trunk?
It was I'm not sure. Like means how to describe it. It's wide enough, and have a lot of leaves out of it.
Do you think you could shake it?
No, I don't
No.
think.
And that's really
No.
it's the fascinating part of the instruction to shake the date palm. For a
Right.
woman who is weak and in childbirth is even weaker and also suffering
Yeah.
because she's isolated from her family and people, is given an impossible instruction: shake the date palm.
Yeah.
And the whole point is, what your point is, that you make the effort, Allah gives you the result.
Right.
We are not held accountable for the results. We are held accountable for the efforts that we make. And this is why it's a combination of these things, that, and really what's required from us. And Allah says in the Quran that you will see your efforts, because there will be prophets that come on the day of judgment with zero followers.
Yep.
But they're going to be accounted according to the efforts they made, not according to the number of people that were brought with them. So for us, you take the steps, you do your best, and then leave the outcome to Allah, inshallah. But Jazakallah khair, beautiful question, brother. I appreciate that, mashallah.
Yeah. So Brother Imran, on that, because my question is not like, my question is more regarding the current condition of ours. It's like we are more focused on, only dua and, asking Allah instead of doing any kind of a first step or any kind of efforts that we should be able to doing. So that's
indirectly, brother, we are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're saying the same. We're just doing it with a little bit of nuance, but we're saying exactly the same thing. We have to be much more organized, coordinated. We must make efforts to make changes and ask Allah to help us, because ultimately everything is in His control.
Definitely. So, Dr. Imran Saab, when you are going to put some more Urdu content, I've seen you on Dr. Dr. Wajdi Saab's stream.
Yeah, I was with brother Kaysar Raja Ahmed's stream.
Yes.
But definitely,
yes.
I've neglected this, and you're right. I will make dua, inshallah, making time. So in the coming few months, inshallah, you should see content. But definitely prod me, brother. I really appreciate that. Sometimes these things, they fall out of your forethought because you're busy with other things. But you're right. We definitely need to do more in this regard, inshallah.
Definitely. So, Dr. Saab, one more thing, can I send you some email on your email address just to have, maybe some topic to suggest in Urdu, so we can,
That would be very good, brother. We'll put the email up. The email is there.
EFDawah.
Just email us, and I will use that as the template for the next videos, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, brother.
Sure. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Dr.
MashaAllah, what a lovely brother. Okay, Muslims for Israel, if you want to just put your camera on so we can identify you, and then we'll get you on. In the meantime, if you're taking time to do that, Imran, we have a question here from a brother whose device is not connected. I have a question. If we say that our afterlife is much important, I'm reading exactly the words, even though it might not be grammatically correct. So please, excuse me. So I have a question. If we say that our afterlife is much important than this life, and how the Quran says that this life is an illusion, how will be the afterlife be? And if our desired are to be fulfilled in afterlife, why don't we kill ourselves now and live our life post death? So I don't know if you understood that, but that's how the question was written. So I'm just reading it out as it was written.
Yeah. So, alhamdulillah. So I'm gonna paraphrase the question just to make it easier. Well, if the afterlife is the real life and is much more important, then why not just? And this life is just an illusion. Why not just end it and go and live that life? So what's missing here is that where will you be in the afterlife depends on how you are here. So if you're gonna kill yourself to get there, then you're going to be in a position where you maybe don't want that afterlife. You'd rather be here. So hopefully that will help the brother, inshallah.
Yeah, and I think, Brother Shabazz, the point here is that what should we do in this life and how should we best live this life comes from the one that created us. So by guessing all of these things doesn't give us any certainty. So the question is,
but the point really was that you're doing something wrong.
Exactly.
And that will have consequences in the hereafter.
Exactly.
So one of the principles of Islam is the ends does not justify the means. So what we mean by that is you cannot do anything bad to have a good outcome, what you think might be a good outcome. Killing yourself we're told is a sin. You should not do that. And if you do that, then don't be expecting to get a good reward for that. Brother, sorry, carry on.
No, that's fine. I mean, but ultimately, if you're confused about these things, Shabazz, it's better to find out about these things from the one that created you. You know, why am I here? What should I do? Where am I going? These questions are very clear and clearly answered for us as Muslims. So that should be our default position always for guidance. And all of this other nonsense about, well, what if I do this? What if I do that? That's just, it's nonsense, basically. It's what you've heard and what you've seen and what you've done, and it doesn't mean anything, quite frankly.
You know, the other way of asking this question is change who you're asking it to. So for an atheist, where this life is just an accident, and you're just a blip in the geological time frame of the universe or even the Earth. Nothing really has value or meaning or purpose. You're just suffering. Then just end it, because there's not going to be anything. There's no consequence afterwards either, because it's not like there's a God to punish you or anything like that. You're just gonna be out of the discomfort that you're in with your mind. So the point here is that this is where atheism leads you to nihilism. Why are you here? There's no reason. You're an accident. Is there any purpose in you being here? No, apart from ones you arbitrarily assign yourself. Is there any value in being here? Or value is arbitrary, it's self-assigned, or there's no ultimate value. There's no ultimate purpose. Is there any meaning behind? No, we were just an accident. It's something happened that brought about this sort of conscious being. There's no actual meaning behind this. So I'm suffering. Why should I carry on like this? Why not just end it? And that's where this is where atheism will ultimately lead you to, especially if you're in a difficult circumstance. And that's the position, really. So it's really, and if people haven't read Yusuf Ponder's book on nihilism, I would highly recommend that. He talks through his own journey, and he describes the different aspects of the atheism and where it leads to in terms of the belief about your purpose. So it's really, really important. So I love this phrase brothers put here. This life is the farm of the afterlife. I think what is meant is that you receive your harvest of what you sow in this life in the afterlife. Very beautiful metaphor.
MashaAllah. Very beautiful indeed. MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. Okay, Idris, we're going to get you on next. Just give me a quick thumbs up, Idris. Just give me a thumbs up. I think your internet connection is very slow, but he's frozen, I think. Wassim, you got okay, lovely. Idris, you can leave your camera on, or you can turn it off. I suspect you might need to turn it off because I think your internet is very slow. But let's get you on now. Idris, welcome to the stream.
Wa
alaikum salam, brother.
I'm Idris. So I remember, a few, I think 2 streams back, that my wife holding, right? So her name was Autumn. Remember Autumn?
Brother Idris, your voice is breaking up. Can you just repeat what you just said? Brother Idris. Walaikum salam, brother. Brother, your voice is breaking up. Maybe you can put your question in the chat if we struggle to have you on.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
All right. Okay. So yeah, I was kind of
Jason Burns in disguise.
like a few.
No, it's not.
It's not.
Please, brother Idris, go ahead.
Okay. So I was. Can you hear me now? I know, kind of.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So I was saying my wife, like, called in like last like 2 streams back about so she's a Christian and I'm kind of like a Muslim. We I know I remember you guys giving her this kind of like a beautiful word, and I just want to ask because like we have like sometimes we do like struggle about us like being two like different kind of the faith. So it's more like it comes back to one thing that sometimes I try what I can do, and then how like we have like different backgrounds. She grew up from here, and then I grew up from here, but it's more like the thing is the issue is about faith. I think we have like a very different understanding of our faith. And when she called, she called in and spoke to you, I felt like you guys kind of try like reach to her, which I like. When I try talking to her, it seems so much like free, like like dead end. So I don't know what to do. Sometimes it's more like frustrating sometimes, and but I'm kind of like patient because we've come a long way to where we are right now, like even like faith wise, because she was so much like her family was so anti like Islam, and for some reason like things sometimes they like make sense, and sometimes I know they don't make sense. So I just want to get some like tips from you guys of what I can do regarding that, because it's pretty like sometimes I feel like we are like moving any forward, even though he says something she understands. So I don't know. I just want to make sure get some tips from
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Imran, if I've heard correctly, he has somebody that he knows, a lady who he's finding it difficult to give dawah to. Is that correct? Have I got that correct?
It's his wife, brother. She's Christian.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she. You're saying that she came on before, and you were finding it hard to give her dawah, and it ends up not in a good way. So what I just if that's the question, I'll try to answer that. But I may make it easy for you. I think that one of the most powerful things you can do in this relationship is to exemplify Islam and what being a good Muslim husband is. And I think that if you raise the standard of your interactions and you focus yourself on being and practicing and demonstrating what Islam does to not only you as an individual and your interactions with her, but also your wider interactions, then she will see the benefits to the human being of being a Muslim. And then when it comes to these discussions about specific parts of religion, actually it can be quite difficult to give close family members dawah. We find a lot with the Riva brothers and sisters, they go through a similar situation where it's very hard to give dawah to family members. And so there's a couple of approaches. One is to indirectly give dawah, so leave material around that she can access, which is very simple, pamphlets and booklets that talk about the very basic things that you are trying to discuss. And the alternative way is actually to ask her to come, because you said she's interacted with us before. We're happy to interact again. It doesn't have to be on camera. It can be off stream, and we're happy to do that. And feel free to invite her, inshallah. But actually your actions don't underestimate the effect of this on your wife. Because if you're holding yourself to a high standard that you can see that, then this will have a very great impact. In fact, I knew a brother who was in a similar situation, and he was doing this. He was following this advice from another more learned brother. And what happened was that after a short time, I don't know exactly how long, maybe half a year to a year, one day he was praying his salah, and she just joined him in the salah. and that was, he never did any direct dawah apart from this sort of way, and she just stepped in and joined the salah, and so that was purely a demonstrating Islam, demonstrating being a Muslim. That had a very powerful effect. But Brother Abbas, any other advice, inshallah?
Yeah, Brother Idris, I think Dr. Imran has given very good advice there, that, just be the very best Muslim husband that you can be. And that means be compassionate, be caring, be loving, be considerate, be compromising, don't be rigid, and love and affection and softness are things that are universally liked, accepted, and people are more able to perhaps, connect with and like. So that's the one thing. The other thing is that it is sometimes, as Dr. Imran has said, it is difficult sometimes to give dawah to people that are very close to you. But if you'd both like to come on and book a time, inshallah ta'ala, we'll talk. We don't have to have it live, and that's not important. And we can, inshallah, just speak, and she can ask any questions that she has. And, you can raise any questions that you might have. And inshallah ta'ala, we can maybe help her along her journey if she would like to do that, of course, But also do not underestimate the power of dua. Pray for her and pray for her iman. Allah opens up her heart, for Islam, of course, and guides her, inshallah, to Islam. These things can sometimes take time. They don't always happen overnight. So don't lose patience. Keep your dua, keep your supplications to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be the very best husband according to Islam that you can be. An honorable man, a man who is not procrastinating, is not lazy, who works, who helps his wife as well, who supports his wife as well. That's a manly trait. This is not a lot of people, a lot of cultures, we sort of think, helping out in the house or being compassionate and being caring is somehow, feminine traits. No, these are also masculine traits, because it shows that you have character, that you're not afraid to do what's right, and you're prepared to perhaps break out of cultural norms and sensibilities, because Islam actually supersedes all of that. And inshallah ta'ala, you're a strong man, that you actually, look after yourself, your hygiene, you beautify yourself, you look after yourself in that sense as well. All of these things are a complete man in Islam. And inshallah ta'ala, Allah will guide her and help her. And I'm sure we'll also ask the people who are watching the stream to also pray for your wife as well, that Allah makes things easy for her, and makes it easy for you as well. So I hope that helps, Brother Idris.
Oh yeah, definitely that does. So the issue, so what I think, for the alhamdulillah, I appreciate your dua for that, and your prayers for that. So the thing about what I see is like as you said, everything I do, like everything. For example, I go to work every day. So pray 10 times a day. Read the Quran. Fast Mondays and Thursdays. So because we do have a daughter and one along the way. So it's more like I try to be as much of a husband and as a father as I can be. But I must say, even trying to explain things to her, and that she understands it, she gets it. The only problem is she gets it, and then as soon as the tables turn to Christianity, then tables are as if she never understood anything. It's more like I don't know anything. It doesn't matter. You're wrong. And I'm right. So it's more like that's more like a cycle. We're kind of moving around, which I feel
so it's that thing, brother, about the direct dawah. So sometimes it's better if the direct dawah can come from someone else, because what you don't want to do is you don't want your relationship to be affected by the difficulty of the discussions every time it becomes an uncomfortable position. And let that come from, if there are people who are able to do that for you on your behalf, then allow that to happen, inshallah.
I was gonna say the same thing. Is every time, it seems like we talk about the things, But every time that she's like, yeah, all you talk about is his religion. All you talk about is your religion being like better and good. So she she just stands like offensive, like more like fighting back.
This is why you don't want to get into a defensive positions on either side. So the best thing is to not have the difficulty within the relationship of these discussions all the time. Now and then is fine if there's an occasion or she brings it up or something. That's a different thing. But there are other people that can help you, inshallah, in this, and let them be the ones that she's disagreeing with, and not let it be you, because otherwise you will drive a wedge between yourself and herself without intending to, which will have a bigger impact because you have children as well to consider. And ultimately, that's something that should be very carefully. Maybe you should balance the way you interact. So you be the good husband, inshallah. Do the things that you're doing. Show the love that that you should be showing, and be merciful with her. Be good to your children, as I'm sure that you are. Inshallah, may Allah make us all good parents and husbands and wives.
Ameen.
And then let us have the conversations with her, or let her interact with somebody who can speak to her directly about this in a way that she may accept. Sometimes when you're in the defensive position, even if you know something is right, you hesitate. And I think that maybe a conversation can help her to overcome that if it's not the same individual. Yeah. But hopefully that was useful, Brother Idris.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, one more thing that I want to ask. So how it's Christmas, right? It's tomorrow. So it's more like we have how Christians are. They have all the things. They have holidays, which feel like they don't make sense. And try to explain that to her. She just grew up it's more attached to them. And also there's Christmas going on tomorrow, and it's more she wanted me to go with, which I did not go. I said in the bar she took the kid with her. And so it's more it feels how, because I feel every time I go to her home, I do have an effect, because her parents really feel they like me because of my character and how I see things and how I do things. But the problem is if they take you away, they want you to participate in all these things they do. They have these Christmas celebrations and Easter and Valentine's Day, something like that. So well, how can you juggle that? How can you go? Because I want to go there. I want to go there and visit and be with them and show them how good a character can be. But the problem is if I go there, and I want to be as a good Muslim, then sometimes kind of we have what we collide. It's collusion. So how do I play that? How do I go there and be a good Muslim and not a Christian?
Which country are you in, brother?
United States.
United States. Okay. So I think one of the things that we tend not to realize. So now I'm just laying something out, maybe not specifically to you, brother. Sometimes one of the things that we will run into when we don't think about the future when we're marrying is that we end up in scenarios that are like this. So we may find somebody attractive and we like them, and we are Muslim, and then when you're married, and I'm assuming you're not a revert, brother. Tell me if I'm wrong in this. When you're married, you've married them, and then you have to think about, we have two different worldviews. You want your children to be raised obviously as Muslims, and she is Christian and she wants her children to be raised as Christians, and that's a conflict. And your children, unfortunately, are caught within this vice. Now, the thing to do is really what you're doing is to try and help her to, come to Islam by giving her the, your character and your behavior and your dawah. Now, when it comes to the Christian events, that's a different thing entirely. I mean, my only reason to attend anything like that would be to give dawah. I would not be there for any other purpose. But there is a difficulty in that you're married to a Christian. So I think what would be useful for you to do is to find out from a local scholar for yourself if there's any leeway in terms of how you can interact in these environments, just your presence. So because we don't really do any acts that we could consider acts of worship for other religions at all within Islam, but your presence might be presence in this thing might be something different. But you'd have to give the information to the scholar so they would understand where you're coming from, to avoid causing conflict within the family. The other thing is that I would my only reason for being, because you don't want to demonstrate good character to a Christian. I mean, generally you do, but that's not your purpose for going to a Christian event. You're going there, of course, you have your good manners, but actually the purpose would be to try and give them information that would help them to understand either the error that they're in or the fact that Islam is true, something else like this. But you need to balance that now with your family dynamics, because you don't want to be offensive to people that your wife may hold in respect, especially when you're going to an event that they're organizing and hosting. So what I would suggest is send us your email, brother. Send us an email, brother. What we'll do is we'll find someone in your local area where you're based to see that you can discuss with the scholar to see how you should be in this scenario, because it's a little bit complicated for you. But what I'm doing is just using your example to say to people that you have to think before you marry someone who is not of your particular religious persuasion. You have to think that far ahead of how will my kids be affected by this relationship? How will I ensure that they are raised as Muslims? Mother, brother, may Allah make it easy for you. And please email us. We'll put the email on the screen, and please email us, and then we can advise you further, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, brother.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay.
Brother, I just want to. There's one thing I want to mention. There's a sister, Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
She's put this message up in the comments. EFDawah I've been going through sadness. My mother has passed away, but took her shahada 2 weeks ago. But didn't have the chance to be taught much, as I am also a revert. Please make dua for her. May Allah grant her al-firdaus. But you and me are both smiling, and brother Ijaza, I'm sure he's smiling as well. What a beautiful way to go, mashallah.
Yeah, subhanallah.
When you take your shahada, your sins are wiped clean. You are like a newborn baby.
Subhanallah.
And from the point of that time to which of us would not want just to have 2 weeks worth of whatever issues we have before we, that would be the most beautiful way to go, mashallah. I mean,
and not only that, Imran, but there are obviously, the scholars have agreed that there are certain concessions. In other words, a person doesn't have to be completely practicing in everything from day one, because it takes a little bit of time to learn what you're supposed to be doing and how to do things. So that expectation is not even there, subhanallah. So Sister Stacy, I'm not, of course, it's a very traumatic experience and difficult experience when you lose your parent or your siblings or family members or friends even, but inshallah, Allah is merciful. Allah is most merciful, perfectly merciful. Allah knows the limitations of time that your mother had, and that subhanallah, to have all of your mistakes, all of your sins to be wiped out, completely cleaned, forgotten, and then only have accountability for 2 weeks, while she'd accepted this. It's amazing. May Allah bless her.
It gets even better.
Yeah.
Because the sister put this other comment. She said, we weren't able to teach her about our Prophet, peace be upon him, much, because she also suffered with schizophrenia.
Oh, subhanallah.
Why would I say this is better? Because I tell you why. Because the Prophet said, the pen is lifted from 3. There are 3 types of people who are not even, their deeds are not even written down. So one thing, first of all, your deeds have all been wiped clean. Then the 3 types of people whose deeds are not written down: the sleeping one until they awaken, the child until it reaches the age of knowing, understanding, puberty, and third, the one who is not in their right mind. So if the reason she's not able to learn was because she's suffering from this mental illness, then actually now that is a point for her and will benefit her. SubhanAllah. It might be the case, and Allah knows best, that there is nothing to account. SubhanAllah. You live your life. With obviously difficulty going through this with this situation of having this illness. You take your shahada. Allah takes you. He takes you 2 weeks after you die. You take your shahada. Allah takes you. That's a blessing. Blessing in by itself. And then on top of that, you have a condition where your deeds may not even have been recorded. SubhanAllah. Obviously the heart is saddened at the passing of any our loved ones, and and we understand this, and it makes sense. But what a beautiful death! Subhanallah, what a beautiful death! May Allah bless your mother with al-firdaus. May Allah make it easy for you all and give you all sabr. And I think really, brother, sister Stacey, I think your mother is probably one of the luckiest people in terms of outcome of life that I've probably come across. Subhanallah.
May Allah bless your mother and make her transition from this world to the next, alhamdulillah, beautiful and smooth, and give her the coolness of Jannah and paradise, inshallah. So we've got a quick question here from Blessed Be He. Why should I become Muslim? If you could quickly just address that to Dr. Imran before we bring the next guest on, inshallah. Why should anyone become Muslim, for that matter, Dr. Imran?
So ultimately, what we as Muslims believe is that our reason for being here is to worship God alone without partners, and this has been the message from the beginning. And only in Islam will you find that the relationship between the human and the Creator is a pure one, where we worship Him alone. We don't worship worship anything within the creation, and that's the key. So whether it's your desires that you have to struggle with, whether it's your physical environment that you have to struggle with, whether it's whatever situation you're in, ultimately what you have to do is you have to submit your will to the way the Creator wants you to be in the world. And Islam is that way. Islam is the way that leads you to worship Him alone without partners. And may Allah guide you, inshallah. If you have anything specific, feel free to come on and we can have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And we can go further. But that's just in a nutshell. It's that pure relationship between the Creator and the created, without worshipping anything in the creation, be that things, be that internally your desires, or anything else.
MashaAllah. Wassim, just put your camera on quickly for me, and then just give me a quick thumbs up if you could, please. Great. You can turn the camera off, brother. You're on next. Wassim, welcome to the stream. Just unmute yourself, brother.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, brother.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
First of all, just want to thank you very much for your work, the work that you do. It's really appreciate the help that you provide for the people. I just have a good question. There is always this discussion about the idea, about the evidences for God, and the validity of the evidence and the religion, my question, I think, is how to balance between the idea of faith, which is based on proof and maybe arguments, of faith, which is more intuitive.
So brother, the thing is,
can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly. The thing here is that there are different things that are going to convince different people, and there's going to be a different balance between faith and reason depending upon different people, because we're all very different. Some of us will spend a lifelong amount of time till the day we die finding new reasons and more reasons to take any particular position, right? So we're all different. But I would say that the fundamental concepts of believing in a creator, the fundamental concepts of a revelation, the fundamental concepts of prophethood, I actually think that much of these are not necessarily just faith-based, but they are very strong, reasoned arguments, often based with evidence. Now, when I say evidence, I'm talking about evidence as it is understood within the normative sense. So normally we regard certain things to be evidence. So multiple testimony, where it's from reputable sources, which can, which often is separated by geographical location or even language, etc., etc. When we have this collaborated evidence that comes through even this type of avenue, it's regarded as evidence. Historical evidence is not something you or I will ever see. We never see a particular ship land on a particular island somewhere or land somewhere, but we believe that those people that are claimed to be the ones who set foot on that island first, that's evidence for us because it comes from multiple sources of testimony, multiple testimony, attested testimony. So there's lots of different evidences and there's lots of different ways of looking at evidences. Often the problem is that when people start talking about religion, they start to make up their own definitions of what evidence is. And for everything else, they have a different criteria of evidence. So there's a lack of consistency there. But I'll let Dr. Imran come in there, inshallah, as well. And then we'll get the next guest on, inshallah.
So, Brother Wassim, you asked about a distinction between the different ways.
Yes.
What did you mean by a distinction between the different ways?
What I mean, maybe, for example, the problem is most of the time is when the evidences are maybe questioned or debunked or something. There's this always looking for the next evidence and the next evidence, and this loop of looking for evidence. For example, the previous scholar, when the previous speaker, when he talked about scientific evidences, it's like his bar of evidences, his evidences are only limited to those when those evidences are maybe debunked or even overused or something, they are like when they are challenged, they are left with maybe a void of no evidences.
Yes.
And
I understand.
I don't think if I relating my
Yes, you are, brother. So what this goes back to the point, brother, that the foundation has to be strong. So we need to know why we believe what we believe, and I think that's sometimes missing, particularly in if you're born into a Muslim family that doesn't sort of train you in this, but like give you the information, like pray, but you're not told why you should pray. Worship Allah, but you're not told why is Allah worthy of worship, or why do we believe that God would exist in the first place, or if these foundations aren't part of your learning, then what happens is you don't have this, and then you try and make yourself a foundation by science or scientific miracles, or you'll find another thing that you will use on numerical signs, and then when the foundation is like this that you then use, and when that is debunked in some way, that will affect you. Now what people need to do is ensure that their foundations are correct, but ultimately they have to avoid being in a position where they're not relying on these things that aren't of solid foundations. So hopefully that will be useful. Now, if you go to sites like the Sapiens Institute, they have a whole plethora of teachings and lecture series that you can actually go through that will help you establish foundations of coming to why you believe what you believe. And that's probably and this is what we do with the new Muslims, as we they go on these ways of establishing their foundation, these courses that are there that are available. And I think actually it's probably good for everyone to do, anyone from any background to do, because it will add to your foundation of why you're a Muslim, and I think that's important. And so I personally don't think there's a distinction to be made between one type of belief or another. Most people don't need to have scientific evidences for them to believe in Allah or the Quran or anything like that. They don't. In fact, there's a story I've mentioned before about an old lady who saw a scholar passing by asking, "Who is this?" And someone said, "This is a scholar who's written a book about 70 proofs for the existence of God." And she said, "Oh,
Yeah,
he must have
and she asked him about
70 doubts. He must have 70 doubts." And then this is where we get that concept of, may we have the faith of the old women, because they didn't require anything. It was just there. So hopefully that's useful, brother. And we'll the Sapiens links we'll put up, inshallah, in the description for you.
Yeah, that's really important.
Okay, brother. Jazakallah khair for coming on, brother.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much.
So if you can just wrap up, Abbas, I would really appreciate that.
Inshallah. Okay, we'll wrap up now. I'm going to just very quickly get Hicham on very quickly. Hicham, just give me a quick thumbs up. Hicham, give me a thumbs up, please. I think possibly your video is frozen. I think possibly.
It looks like the video is frozen.
Yeah, brother Hicham, I need to have you just give me a quick thumbs up. Okay, we're going to get you on next very quickly, and you'll be our last guest today. Brother Hicham, you can leave your camera on or you can turn it off, whatever you're comfortable with. Hicham, welcome to the stream.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
How you doing? How you doing, brother?
Fine, thank you.
I'm so happy to be with you here, guys. It's an honor for me. I've been watching you since maybe three years ago, and I'm so inspired by your work. Jazakumullahu khair. Jazakumullahu khair. I have a quick question. I am a specialist in animal ecology, and I have read a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari about killing snakes and some specific species of reptiles. I want to understand more if we have to find this. How do we determine this species, and how to deal with this order? If we can say it's an order from the Prophet ﷺ.
Yeah, and I don't know if the order is to literally go hunting for snakes, but I think this was more a question of if a snake comes towards you and is potentially harming you. But I might be mistaken, but it's a big question, actually. I don't know if we've got time for it today, to be fair, Brother Hicham. It might be something that you email us and we actually do some digging and find out. But I don't know if, Doctor, you've got any information there clearly, or I fear this is probably going to be quite an in-depth discussion to have as a last discussion.
I don't. Sorry, I have not come across a hadith. I remember reading a while ago that if there was a snake in your house, you would ask it to leave for 3 days, and then if it doesn't, then you would kill it. And I think that this is based upon some understanding. It's not as simple as, it's not as black and white as if you see a snake.
3 days or 3 times.
Or 3. I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
I remember.
yeah.
I'm
Maybe 3 times, yeah.
3 times.
But the point here is that I don't think it is that it's not a black and white order thing that whenever you see something, you would kill a snake. Snakes in them of themselves are just a creation of Allah. There's nothing particularly, apart from the fact they're dangerous for us. So if they're in your environment, maybe that's a different scenario. And I think this is what is meant behind this. But I'd have to look into this a little bit more. And in fact, I'll make a note of it, inshallah, and try and find out more.
So,
about
brother, what we'll do is we'll put our email address up, inshallah, and just email us. And it's a question I don't think I've come across that I've been asked anyway. So, inshallah, maybe we can do more research on it and then give you a proper answer on that. But Jazakallah khair for coming on, brother. I'm sorry that it had to be so short.
Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair, brother. Take Islam.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Alhamdulillah. So that concludes our session. I was actually expecting not too many people to come on today because obviously, day off tomorrow. A lot of people probably with family as well, because a lot of family tend to be off, and then tends to be more dinners and things like that. But alhamdulillah, we had quite a lot of you join us today. We're very grateful. Jazakallah khair to all the mods who tirelessly vet through the comments and are much engaged in the comments. Jazakallah khair to all of you who like the streams and you, mashallah, share the streams. For anyone out there who's got doubts in Islam, there are very good courses free that are on Sapiens Institute. please access those courses. At the beginning of the stream, we did put some links out for courses and for videos and things like that. Access that information, inshallah. Be active in your learning of Islam. And because this will help you, not just yourself, but it will help, inshallah ta'ala, your family, and more importantly, I think not just your family, but of course your children and your generations to come. And I think for that, that's very, very important. One of the things that, we had a question earlier from Brother Edris about, his wife being Christian and what have you. One of the rights, the first right of the children is that you get them a good mother. That's the first right of the children. And so many of us, may Allah forgive us, we get it wrong because we tend to go for things of beauty and love and all of these things. And then we forget the practicalities of marriage. We forget the long-term effects of marriage. And then, of course, we sometimes have to end up suffering the consequences of that. But mashallah, Sister Hiram's put the link there as well for Sapiens Institute. They do a really good no doubt course. I would urge you all, inshallah, look at that course, because when people then come to you with doubts, it will actually give you a really good framework of where those doubts stem from, where they come from. But again, jazakallah khair to all of you who joined us. Please remember us in your du'as. Remember our families in your du'a as well, that Allah blesses them with afiyah. And of course, pray for the whole of the ummah. Pray for all of the brothers and sisters who came on to the show today and asked for prayers. And of course, not forgetting all of our Muslim brothers and sisters around the world who are currently going through very difficult times. And of course, we pray for the globe generally as well, that Allah spreads iman, belief and peace throughout our existence and throughout our planet. Assalamu alaikum.
I mean,
before
you
sorry,
say,
Judge, I didn't realize you were still there.
That's okay. Just one final thought for anyone interested on the permissibility of saying Merry Christmas, the claim that Christmas is originally pagan, what do the churches say today, what do ancient Near Eastern scholars say presently. I've had a couple of fairly popular interactions on that topic. So if any of that interests you, we'll have like this full write-ups on Twitter, references, links, PDFs, journal articles to show everyone that yes, Christmas is of pagan origin, to the point that the church fathers would say, the pagans say that December the 21st is when the sun god is born, the invincible sun god. And so if that is what they say, then they must be referring to Christ Jesus. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So yeah, I've just been sharing information like that, catching people off guard. Remember, anyone who tells you that Christmas is not pagan does not know anything about Christmas. I'll just leave it there. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Is there more on your channel as well, Calling Christians on YouTube?
So today, alhamdulillah, I've crossed 40,000 followers on Twitter, now X. We're almost about to hit 41, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
And yeah, my posts are getting 1 million views here and there.
Mashallah.
We had the whole Pierre's debacle, but Pierre's retweeted me and I were back and forth. So it's been splendid, alhamdulillah. Just make dua. I have a request for those in the audience. Please make dua that I can receive some relief from my current circumstances. And please forgive me if I've done anyone any wrong. I mean, jazakallahu khair.
Barakallahu fi. Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Imran, any last words before we go, inshallah?
Anything good is from Allah, and anything that is in error or a mistake is from ourselves and from shaitan. May Allah forgive our shortcomings.
Ameen.
Jazakallah to all the brothers. May Allah accept and sisters who are working hard in the background as the mods. May Allah bless all of our brothers and sisters in Palestine and continue to give them strength, and ultimately victory is from Allah.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.